I used to think the radio was the loneliest sound in the world. Not the music, not the static, but that dead space between the words. The little crackle when someone lets go of the button and you realize you're the only one listening. That's what the nights felt like out on Highway 9. Just static between the words. It was late October, 3 years ago, when dispatch first called it in. A stalled car on mile marker 47. A dark sedan, engine dead, hazard lights flashing. Standard stuff. But by the time officers arrived, the car was gone. No skid marks, no sign of it being towed, nothing. Just an empty shoulder and a faint smell of gasoline. It happened again the next night. Same report, same spot, and again nothing. That's when they sent me. I'd been with the department for 7 years by then. Long enough to know that most ghost car calls come down to drunks, pranksters, or kids with too much imagination. Still, there was something about the dispatcher's voice that night. It was a routine. She sounded like she'd seen something herself. Unit 12 radio check. I remember answering, loud and clear, and that was the start of it. The drive out with quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your skull. Out there, the desert stretches forever. Just cracked asphalt, scrub grass, and the dull hum of the world forgetting you exist. The moon hung low, big and swollen, and every now and then a gust of wind would throw sand against the windshield like rain. Mile marker 47. There it was. I slowed down, my headlights carving through the dark. For a second, I thought I saw something glinting just ahead, metal, maybe, but as I got closer, it was gone. Just a shimmer of heat on the road. Even though the night was cold enough to see your breath, I parked on the shoulder and turned off the engine. The silence rushed in, heavy and alive. Dispatch, Unit 12. I'm at 47. No vehicle in sight. There was a pause. Then, copy that, 12. We just got another call. Same car, same location. Caller says it's got its hazards on. I turned my head, scanning the road. Empty. My pulse kicked up. Negative. I said, no lights here. Static. Then 10-4. I remember standing there, one hand on my flashlight, waiting for, I don't know, something. The smell hit me first. Burnt oil and something sweet like antifreeze. Then, faintly, the sound of an engine turning over. Just once. Then silence. I swung the light around, but there was nothing. Just a ripple of air, like heat rising off pavement. I told myself it was wind. Maybe an echo from the highway a mile north. But then the radio popped again. Unit 12, do you copy? I pressed a button. Go ahead. Got another call. Same car. Caller says someone's inside at this time. That's when the dread hit. Not the kind that jumps out at you, but the slow, crawling kind that starts in your stomach and climbs your spine. Copy. I said quietly and got back in the cruiser. I drove about 20 yards down, scanning both sides. Nothing. I was about to turn back when the headlights caught something. It was a car, black, mid-90s sedan, parked at an angle, half on the shoulder, half in the dirt. No plates. Hazards clicking, steady and slow. Finally, I pulled up behind it, radioed to my location, and stepped out. The air smelled wrong, like ozone after lightning. My flashlight beam trembled across the windows. Dark tint, no movement inside. I tapped on the glass. Nothing. Highway patrol. I said, you okay in there? No answer. I tried the door handle. It clicked open. Empty. The seats were dry. No signs of a struggle. No footprints in the dirt outside. Just dust. Old dust. I leaned in and looked closer. There was something on the passenger seat. A cassette tape, unlabeled, just sitting there like it had been waiting. I picked it up. It was warm. When I looked back up, my headlights were off. I didn't hear them go out. I just realized suddenly the road was darker than it should have been. I turned toward the cruiser and my chest tightened. The car was gone. Not moved. Not dimmed. Gone. The red and blue light that had been painting the road. Gone. The only thing left was a faint outline of tire tracks leading nowhere. I stood there for a long time, trying to breathe slow. Then the radio came alive again. Unit 12 radio check. I grabbed the mic, almost dropped it. Dispatch, this is 12. Do you copy? Static. Then, faintly, the same voice repeated. Unit 12, radio check. Only it wasn't dispatch. The voice was mine. I froze. The same tone, same rhythm, my own voice, like an echo bouncing through the frequency. I said nothing. The voice on the radio said, "You shouldn't have opened the door." That's when the hazards on the sedan clicked on again. Slow, mechanical. Click, click. The tape in my hand started to vibrate, a low hum coming from inside it, like it wanted to be played. I backed away. I should have gotten in the car, called for backup, done something, but I couldn't move. I just stared at that empty road. The car glowing faintly with its own sick light, and then it faded, like mist. The sound went first, then the shape, and then it was just gone. No tire marks, no smell, just me standing there with a cassette that no longer hummed. I drove back to the station around 4 a.m., shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. I didn't tell anyone what I saw, just filed a report. No contact, false alarm. But I kept the tape. I don't know why. Maybe because part of me thought I'd imagined everything. A week later, I bought an old cassette player at a thrift store. I waited until I was home. Door locked, lights off. I sat at the kitchen table, the tape between my fingers, cold now. When I pressed play, there was silence, then a soft click, and then my own voice came through. Unit 12, radio check. Followed by static. Then another voice, distant, whispering through the crackle. I couldn't make out words at first, but as I turned the volume up, I caught fragments. Mile marker, again, open the door, can't leave, and underneath it all, something else, breathing, slow, steady, not mine. The tape ended after 3 minutes. I played it again and again until I realized something was changing each time. The words weren't in the same order. Sometimes the voice laughed. Sometimes it cried. Once it said my name. That's when I threw it in the drawer and decided to forget, except I couldn't. Because every night since then, at exactly 11:47 p.m., my radio, still tuned to patrol frequency, comes alive for just a few seconds. Unit 12 radio check. Always my voice. Always the same tone. And if I don't answer, the hazards outside my house flicker on by themselves. I don't drive Highway 9 anymore. They reassigned me after I stopped responding to calls. The new guy took over my route a few months later. He lasted 3 weeks. The report said he went missing during a routine stop near mile marker 47. They found his cruiser with the lights still flashing, driver's side door open, radio mic on the ground. The only thing inside was an unlabeled cassette, and when the chief played it back at the station, all it said was, Unit 12, radio check. Then static. But this time, it wasn't my voice. It was his, and it was still recording. Every night now, I hear that faint click through the radio, like someone's picking up the mic on the other end of nowhere. Sometimes, if I listen close enough, I can almost hear the road itself breathing, long, slow exhales through static, as if the highway's waiting for me to answer. And I know one day I will, because I still keep the tape. And it's warm again. They told me the mind fills in the blanks when it's scared, that the brain would rather invent meaning than face what doesn't make sense. But what if the blanks aren't in your head? What if they're out there, on the road, waiting for you to come back? It's been 3 weeks since the night I found that car, or thought I did. Everyone at the station treats it like an open joke now. They call me Radio Check. They laugh when the radio crackles at night. But when they laugh, they keep one hand on the mic, like they're not sure if someone's listening back. I told myself I was done with Highway 9, but last night, dispatch called again. Same location, same report. A stalled car at mile marker 47. Only this time, the caller said the engine was still running. I don't even remember agreeing to go. I just remember the sound of my cruiser's tires grinding over gravel again, the red glow of the dashboard, and the way the world seemed to get quieter the closer I got. No music this time, no chatter, just my heartbeat and the radio humming like something alive. When I reached mile 47, I almost didn't recognize it. The road looked newer, the asphalt smooth, the paint lines fresh. like it had been rebuilt overnight. The wind had stopped completely. Even the bugs had gone silent. And there it was, a black sedan. Same model, same shape, headlights beaming straight ahead into the dark. Only now, the engine was running. The exhaust drifted upward in slow, pale waves, and the faint smell of gasoline made my stomach twist. I parked behind it and stepped out. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on me. I radioed in. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've got eyes on the vehicle. Engines running, but no driver in sight. Silence." I waited a few seconds, then said it again. Nothing, not even static. I clicked the mic a few more times, just to hear the click. It didn't. That's when I realized the radio wasn't working at all. It was on, but there was no signal, no light, no sound. Dead air. I looked at the sedan again. The driver's door was open, just a crack. A faint orange light blinked on and off on the dashboard, like the heartbeat of something that shouldn't be alive. "Hello?" I called out. "Highway Patrol. You all right in there?" No answer. I took a slow step forward. The sound of the gravel under my boots was too loud, like the world had been turned down everywhere else. I shined my light inside. Empty, but there was something strange. The driver's seat was pushed all the way back, and the seatbelt was still fastened, buckled into itself. The engine idled low like a growl. The air vents were on, blowing cold air, and on the passenger seat there was another cassette tape. No label, just sitting there, waiting. I didn't touch it. I leaned in closer instead and noticed something else. The headlights. They weren't pointed down the road. They were aimed straight into the desert, at nothing, just sand and brush and the faint shimmer of heat. But the longer I looked, the less it looked like sand. The ground seemed to ripple, like water, like the reflection of something moving underneath. I blinked, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shape standing in the light. Tall, thin, head tilted like it was listening. Then the headlights flickered, and it was gone. I stumbled back, the beam of my flashlight shaking across the road. Everything in me screamed to leave, but the engine kept idling, and I couldn't walk away from a running car. That's not how this job works. So I reached inside, grabbed the keys, and turned it off. The silence that followed, it wasn't natural. It was like pulling the plug on something alive. Then I heard it, a soft tap on the roof of the car. Once, then again. I looked up, nothing. I circled around, shining my light across the metal, and saw a single handprint in the dust. Not fresh, not dirty either, just outlined, like the dust had pulled away from the shape, leaving behind the memory of a touch. Then, from behind me, the radio crackled. Unit 12 radio check. I froze. My radio was still clipped to my vest. Dead. No light, no sound. The voice wasn't coming from it. It was coming from inside the sedan. The cassette. I leaned toward the open door. The tape was spinning on its own. No one had pressed play, and the voice that came through wasn't mine this time. It was slower, breathless, like someone trying to speak through a broken throat. "Get in." I backed up, shaking my head. "Not tonight." I whispered. The engine roared to life on its own. Headlights flared so bright, they burned through the dark, filling everything with white. And in that light, for a split second, I saw the driver. He was sitting there, face turned toward the windshield, hands on the wheel, skin gray, eyes wide open, mouth moving silently like he was still trying to breathe. Then nothing. The headlights died. The engine cut out, and the car was empty again. I don't remember running back to my cruiser. I just remember the feel of the cold metal when I slammed the door shut. My hand was shaking so hard I dropped the keys twice. When I finally got the engine going, the radio came back on by itself. Static, then a voice. "Unit 12, do you copy?" It was dispatch. Except not exactly. The words were right, but the tone was wrong. Too calm, too even. I said, "Copy, this is 12. Vehicle located." But the voice cut me off. Describe the driver. My mouth went dry. "What?" "Describe the driver, Unit 12. I didn't answer. "Did you see him?" The voice asked again, lower this time, almost like it was standing right behind me. I turned off the radio. The rest of the drive back is a blur. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting to see headlights behind me, but there was nothing, only darkness swallowing the road in both directions. When I reached the station, the parking lot was empty. The lights were on, the door unlocked, but the place was dead quiet. I walked down the hall toward the communications room, and that's when I heard it. A faint clicking sound from behind the door. I pushed it open. All the radios were on, every single one, their lights blinking in perfect rhythm. Click, 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 and through the speakers, the same voice described the driver. Over and over, like a broken record, like a test that would never end. I turned off the main power, and the room went dark. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then, from somewhere deep inside the static, a whisper, "You already did." The radios went silent. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, I've been seeing headlights outside my window, always the same distance away, always pointed at nothing. I tried to tell the chief, but he just stared at me like he was trying to remember who I was. Said there's no Unit 12 on record anymore. Said that number was retired after the accident last year. The accident I can't remember. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the cruiser window, and for a split second, the uniform looks older, faded, like it's been out there a long, long time. Last night, I played the tape again. It didn't sound like the first one. This time it was only breathing, slow, wet, shallow, then a whisper, look in the driver's seat. I did. I shouldn't have, because sitting there, hands on the wheel, was me, not now me, not alive me, just what was left. Eyes open, mouth moving like it was still trying to say the words. Unit 12 radio check. Now I don't know which side of the glass I'm on anymore. The car's still outside, engine running, headlights pointed at nothing, and I can hear the voice again, through the static, through the walls, through the dark. Get in. Maybe I already did. They told me not to look at the footage. Said the system glitched. Said it happens sometimes when the camera loops too long, without reset. But I had to see it, because the more I tried to forget, the more I felt that road breathing under my skin. I haven't slept right since that night. Every time I close my eyes, I see those headlights, burning white against the dark, pointed at nothing. And behind them, something moving slow, like a reflection that doesn't belong to me. So I went back to the station early that morning. No one else was there. The building always feels wrong in daylight. Too still, too clean, like it's pretending to be normal. I poured a cup of coffee, cold already, and sat down in front of the dash cam terminal. I told myself I'd just skim through it, just enough to clear my head. The footage started at 10:52 p.m. The timestamp flickered, like it didn't want to be read. I watched the cruiser rolling down Highway 9, my headlights carving out a small piece of the world. The road stretched on forever. No sound except the hum of the engine. When the car reached mile marker 47, I paused. My own reflection looked back at me through the windshield, face pale, eyes hollow. I remembered that moment. The silence, the smell of gasoline, the sense that I was being watched from behind my own skin. I hit play again. The camera caught something strange. At first it looked like dust in the beam of the headlights. But the longer I watched, the more it formed a shape, a shimmer, like heat, but darker, standing just off the shoulder. Still, facing the road. The timestamp read 10:58 p.m. That's when I remembered something that didn't make sense. When I radioed in that night, dispatch said the call came in around 11:30, half an hour after the footage was taken. But there it was, the car, the lights, and that shape standing in the dark. I leaned closer, trying to make out details. The frame glitched for a second. When it cleared, the shape was gone. I kept watching. At 11:01, the cruiser slowed. My hand, my real, living hand, reached for the gear shift. The camera view tilted slightly as I stopped. Then the headlights caught something ahead. The black sedan, sitting on the shoulder, empty road, engine running. Only the timestamp said 10:02 p.m. It had gone backwards. I scrubbed the footage back and forth. But every time I hit play, the time shifted again. Earlier, later, earlier, like the tape couldn't decide when it wanted to exist. And then I saw it. At 9:47 p.m., the dash cam showed something impossible. The cruiser was parked at mile 47, but I hadn't even left the station yet. The sedan was already there. Headlights on, hazards blinking, and there was a figure inside, in the driver's seat. I froze the frame, zoomed in. The pixels blurred, but the shape, it looked familiar. Shoulders, haircut, badge on the chest. It was me, my own patrol jacket, my own reflection sitting behind the wheel of a car I hadn't even found yet. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of light, maybe old footage overlapping. But when I zoomed closer, I saw the patch on the arm. Unit 12, my number, and the figure turned its head. I swear to God, it turned its head toward the camera. I paused again. My breath came out uneven. Something about the eyes. They weren't human. Too dark, too hollow, like the reflection on black water, right before it breaks. I rewound, frame by frame. The figure never blinked. It just kept looking, mouth twitching like it wanted to speak. Then the feed cut out. For 10 whole seconds, the screen went black. When it came back, the timestamp read 12:16 a.m. That's after everything had already happened. After I'd driven away. After I'd told myself it was over. And yet, the cruiser was still parked there. Headlights off. The sedan gone. The camera view was grainy. But in the faint moonlight, you could see a shape sitting in the front seat. Not moving. I couldn't see the face. But the shoulders were too broad. The posture too rigid. Someone was sitting in my patrol seat. I leaned so close to the screen that my forehead touched the glass. And then the figure turned, slowly, like it had been waiting for me to look. There was a reflection in the windshield. For a second, I thought it was me again. But then it smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. The kind that says it already knows something you don't. And then it raised a hand. At first, I thought it was waving. But no, it was holding something. A cassette tape. The tape glinted under the moonlight, and I realized it was the same one sitting in my desk drawer. The one I swore I'd never play again. My stomach twisted. I hit pause, then rewind, then play again. But now the figure wasn't there. Just an empty seat. The tape was gone. The timestamp jumped to 2:47 a.m. That number meant something. That was the time my headlights flickered on at home the other night. The night I swore I heard the voice whisper through the radio. Get in. My hands were trembling. The screen started to flicker again. Static crawling in from the edges like frost. I tried to stop the playback, but the button jammed. The footage rolled on by itself. The view shifted, and I realized the camera angle wasn't from the dashboard anymore. It was looking from the passenger seat. The cruiser door opened, and someone climbed in, black jacket, patrol badge, hat tilted low. I couldn't see the face. The figure sat there, adjusted the mirror, and stared into it for a long time. Then it leaned forward, right up to the camera, and whispered something. No sound, just a movement of the mouth. I tried to read the lips. Over and over, frame by frame. It said, "You took my seat." The screen went black again. This time it stayed that way, for almost a full minute. Then, faintly, a shape began to emerge in the darkness. Now in the video, behind me, I felt it before I saw it. A cold breath at the back of my neck. The smell of oil and dust. The faint hum of an engine idling where there shouldn't be one. I turned around, and the terminal's reflection in the glass door showed something moving. Just a shadow at first. But the outline, broad shoulders, tilted head. Watching, I spun back to the screen. The video had changed again. The timestamp read 3:13 a.m. The camera showed my house, my driveway, the cruiser parked outside. Inside, through the windshield, I could see myself sitting in the driver's seat. Still, hands on the wheel, eyes open, and then, from the bottom of the screen, a second reflection began to rise, like something crawling up from the back seat. It leaned close to my ear, its mouth opened wide, too wide, and the image froze there, halfway between a whisper and a scream. Then the tape ejected itself, clattered onto the desk. The screen went blank. I sat there, shaking. The only sound was the low hum of the machine cooling down. Then, a voice through the room's intercom. Unit 12 radio checked. Soft, too close, too familiar. I didn't answer. I just stared at the tape. It was still spinning, even though it wasn't in the player anymore. A faint static has filled the air, and then under it, breathing, slow, steady, right behind me. I turned off the terminal, grabbed the tape, and left. Didn't clock out, didn't look back. When I got home, the cruiser headlights were already on, pointed at my front door, the engine idling low, like it had been running all night. I went inside, closed the blinds, and sat down at the kitchen table. The tape was warm in my hand again. I can still hear the static, not from the player, from outside, through the walls, through the ground. Sometimes it sounds like my own voice. Sometimes it doesn't, but it always says the same thing. Playback complete. And then, your turn. Nights in the mountains used to calm me. There's a certain rhythm up here. Wind through the pines, the distant call of an owl, the hum of the radio when you're alone too long. It used to make sense, but lately, it doesn't feel like the same mountain anymore. They said it started with the fires. Tiny orange flickers seen from the highway below. Tourists called them in, said they looked like campfires way up in the tree line. Except there aren't supposed to be any trails up there. Too steep, too dangerous. I was assigned to the watchtower 2 weeks ago, just to keep an eye on things. That's what the chief said. But I've been a ranger for 12 years, and I know when someone's sending you to the middle of nowhere because no one else wants a shift. The tower sits about 40 feet above the ridgeline. Old wood, new paint, one light that hums even when it's off. I keep a cot, a radio, and a pair of binoculars. That's all you really need. You learn to live with silence. You even start to like it. But this silence, it's different. It feels like it's waiting for something. The first night was uneventful. Clear skies, no movement in the trees. Then, around 1:30 a.m., I noticed a faint orange glow to the east. It looked like someone had lit a small campfire just beyond the ridge. I logged it, radioed in, got no reply. By the time I looked again, it was gone. I figured maybe I imagined it. Light from a plane. Maybe reflection from the valley road. You start to rationalize when you're alone this high up. But the next night, it happened again. Same place, same color. Except this time, it wasn't flickering. It was steady, like a lantern being held still. I could feel the hair on my neck rise as I watched it. I don't know why. It wasn't close. It wasn't moving, but it felt like it was watching back. I called it in again. Tower 4, to base. Got visual confirmation on unidentified light source. Requesting confirmation. Static, then nothing. I waited a minute, tried again. Still nothing. The radio only went quiet like that once before. 2 years ago, when a storm rolled through and fried the relay antenna. But that night, the sky was clear. Not even a breeze. I wrote it down in the logbook. That's what you're supposed to do. Stay professional. Keep track. Pretend that the dark isn't listening. On the third night, the fire appeared closer, still on the east ridge, but higher this time, almost level with the tower. And then there was movement. Through the binoculars, I could make out what looked like a person standing near it. At least, I think it was a person. Tall, still, no gear, no tent, no flashlight, just a black outline against the glow. I tried the radio again, but the static was thicker now, like the air itself was buzzing. So I switched channels. Still nothing. Then, faintly, a voice broke through, only for a second. Tower 4? Check in? Tower 4. Then it cut out. But here's the thing. The voice wasn't from base. It sounded like mine. I didn't sleep that night. The following day, I hiked down to check the relay line. Everything looked fine. No damage. The wires were intact. The tower grounding stable. I even tested the line. Signal was perfect. When I got back to cabin, I found something strange. The logbook. It wasn't where I'd left it. I always keep it under the desk lamp, open to the last entry. But now it was on the windowsill, closed. When I opened it, the last line I'd written was crossed out. A single line through my handwriting. And underneath, in pencil, not pen, pencil, someone had written, "Don't look east." The handwriting wasn't mine. That night, I didn't even try to use the radio. I just sat by the window, watching the tree line. Nothing for hours. Then, around midnight, the glow came back, brighter this time. And I swear it was closer. The firelight reflected off the glass, orange ripples across my face. And for a moment, it looked like there were two of me in the reflection, one staring back with its mouth slightly open. I backed away, turned off the lamp, and that's when the radio came alive on its own. Static first. Then a voice. "Tower 4, check-in. Tower 4. I froze. I didn't touch it. Didn't answer. Then, clearer this time. "Why did you look?" I felt my throat tighten. I wanted to shut it off, but my hand wouldn't move. The voice wasn't mine now. It was softer, lower, but it knew me. I could hear the faint crackle of fire underneath it, like someone was talking through smoke. I whispered, "Who is this?" No reply, just breathing. Slow, even like someone standing right beside the mic. Then the light outside started to move. Slow at first, then faster, weaving between the trees, climbing the slope toward the tower. I dropped the radio. The glow flickered once, then steadied. It had stopped halfway up. And there, just beyond the edge of my floodlight, I saw it. A shape, not quite human. Too tall, too still. And something in the way it stood, its arms hanging loose, head tilted just slightly, made me think of a puppet that had forgotten its strings. I reached for the floodlight switch, but before I could hit it, the voice came again. Through the radio, through the static, through everything. "Stay where you are." It wasn't coming from the desk anymore. It was coming from outside, right beneath the tower. I held my breath and listened. The footsteps on the ladder were soft at first, then deliberate, metal creaking under slow weight. One rung, then another. I backed toward the far wall, eyes locked on the trapdoor. The sound stopped, right below the hatch. For a long time there was nothing, no movement, no sound. Then the radio hissed again, and I heard it whisper, so close it might as well have been inside my head. "You're supposed to check in." The bulb and the lamp popped. Darkness swallowed the room. And for just a heartbeat, I saw an orange glow through the floorboards, like firelight crawling up from underneath. I must have blacked out for a moment, because when I opened my eyes, it was morning. The trapdoor was still closed. The air smelled like smoke. The forest outside was gray with ash. I stumbled to the window. The eastern ridge was burned black, trees charred, ground smoldering, like a fire had swept through overnight. But there were no reports, no planes, no other towers had seen a thing. I checked the radio. It worked perfectly now, clear as day, like nothing had ever happened. I tried call base, but before I could, I noticed something out the window, at the far edge of the ridge, where the fire had burned the hottest. There was a single figure standing among the smoke, still as stone. It looked up toward me, and even from this far away, I could tell it was wearing a ranger uniform. Same patch, same hat, mine. I grabbed the binoculars, but when I looked again, it was gone. Just a faint shimmer where it had been, like heat above the ashes. I thought about packing up right then, driving down, leaving everything behind. But I didn't, because just as I turned to grab my things, the radio clicked again. "Tower 4, this is base," a calm voice said. "Routine check-in. We're reading some interference from your line." I swallowed hard, pressed the button. "This is Tower 4. Copy that." Pause. Then the voice said, "Good. Just wanted to make sure everything's normal." I hesitated. Then I said, "Yeah, everything's normal." But as I spoke, I heard something faint through the static, like another voice overlapping, one that wasn't supposed to be there. It whispered the same words I had, at the exact same time, perfectly in sync. And for the first time since I took this post, I realized I wasn't alone in the tower anymore. The morning after the fire, I told myself it was just exhaustion, Maybe smoke inhalation. Maybe a dream that got tangled with reality. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The forest looked wrong that day. Colors too sharp, air too heavy. The kind of stillness that makes you realize how fragile quiet can be. Even the birds didn't sing. I went through the motions anyway. Logged the temperature, visibility, wind direction. Things that make sense on paper. It's what you do when you're trying not to think. I kept the radio on, just for the sound. Every few minutes, base would call on other towers, routine check-ins, chatter about nothing. But they never called me, not once. By afternoon, smoke from the eastern ridge had thinned out. I thought about hiking down to investigate, but the chief's voice echoed in my head. Don't go off post unless you're ordered. Rules keep you alive in the wilderness. Or at least, that's what I used to believe. Around dusk, the sky turned that strange violet blue that never lasts long. The treetops shimmered like metal in the fading light. I was sitting at the window, sipping lukewarm coffee, when something caught my eye. A flash. South Ridge this time. At first, I thought it was lightning, but it didn't fade. It pulsed. I grabbed the binoculars. There, across the valley, stood another watchtower. I'd forgotten there even was one that far out. Tower 8, maybe? It was supposed to be decommissioned years ago, but someone was there. I could see a silhouette moving behind the railing, and every few seconds, the figure lifted something reflective, catching the dying sunlight and sending it right toward me. Flashes in a pattern. Signal flashes. I lowered the binoculars, blinked, then looked again. Still there, still signaling. My first thought was, maybe it's another ranger. Someone doing maintenance. Maybe a drill. But why signal me instead of using the radio? I hesitated, then picked up the transmitter. This is Tower 4. To any ranger station at Tower 8. Confirm visual? Nothing. Just static. I tried again. Tower 8, you copy? I can see your location. The static deepened, like the sound of wind being swallowed, and underneath it, faintly a whisper, too low to understand. Then the radio clicked off by itself. I looked back through the binoculars. The figure had stopped moving, just standing there now, facing me, still holding the mirror. And then I realized there was no sunlight left for it to reflect. The signal flashes kept coming. One, pause, one, long pause, almost rhythmic, like code. I counted the intervals, tried to make sense of it, but the longer I watched, the less certain I felt that it was meant to be understood. I backed away from the window, heart pounding. Maybe it wasn't a mirror. Maybe it was firelight again. No, I knew that glow too well by now. This was colder, whiter. I sat down, tried to steady my breathing, tried to be rational. The old towers creak and shift in the wind. Maybe it was a trick of the light, but part of me, the part that had been alone up here too long, whispered something else. What if it wasn't a trick? An hour later, the flashes stopped. The tower went dark. I didn't sleep, just lay there listening to the night. Trees groaning, with popping, faint hum of the generator below, and in between, that low whispering static from the radio. When dawn came, I went to the map pinned above my desk, traced my finger to the south ridge. If that was Tower 8, it was at least 6 miles away, too far to reach before nightfall. Still, I needed to know. I called base again, forced a casual tone. Tower 4 here. Do we still have personnel assigned to Tower 8? A pause. Then a voice crackled back. Tower 8 was dismantled in '89. You're the only one out there. My stomach dropped. I wanted to ask again to make sure, but the line went dead mid-sentence. That evening, just before sunset, I saw the flash again. This time I didn't look through the binoculars right away. I just watched from where I stood, pretending I didn't care. But curiosity doesn't leave you alone. It eats through reason until all that's left is the need to see. So I looked. The figure was there again, closer to the railing now. And even though the tower was too far for detail, I could tell something about the shape was off. The arms hung too low, the shoulders bent forward, like the spine was wrong. And the head didn't move at all. Then, for the first time, The figure raised an arm and pointed. Directly at me, I dropped the binoculars. They hit the floor hard enough to crack the lens. When I picked them up again, the tower was empty, just a skeleton of wood and shadow against the darkening sky. That night, the fire alarms went off. They're loud, shrill enough to wake the dead, but the air smelled clean. No smoke, no heat. I killed the siren manually and checked every direction. Nothing, except a faint orange flicker in the south, right where Tower 8 used to be. I sat there for a long time, staring at that light until it began to blur. And just as my eyes started to close, the radio crackled again. Tower 4, do you see it? My chest tightened. The voice didn't sound like bass. Didn't sound like anyone I knew. Too quiet, too calm. I whispered, "Who is this?" No answer. Then, softly, "You're late." Static swallowed the rest. The fire at the south ridge grew brighter, taller, burning with that same unnatural steadiness as before. I thought about grabbing the binoculars, but I couldn't move, couldn't even blink. I just sat there, watching it pulse, bright, dim, until I realized the rhythm matched the signal pattern from earlier. 1, pause, 1, long pause. Again and again. It wasn't a fire. It was calling. By midnight, the forest had gone completely silent again. Even the wind had stopped. The air pressed heavy against the windows, thick with something unseen. I didn't realize how hard I was gripping the desk until my knuckles ached. Then, slowly, the light from the south began to fade. Not like a fire burning out, but like it was turning away, drifting deeper into the woods. I couldn't stop watching. Even when my eyes burned, even when my mind screamed to look away, I couldn't, because for a moment, before it vanished completely, I saw something else. A flicker of reflection. Metal catching the faintest moonlight. A mirror pointed directly at me. The next morning, I found footprints at the base of my tower. Not boots, bare feet, ash pressed deep into the dirt. They led from the direction of the south ridge and stopped right at the ladder. No prints going back. That's when I noticed something else. The binoculars I'd left on the desk were gone. I searched the cabin, every corner, even outside, but they weren't there. Only later, when I looked up from the ground, did I see it. A glint, high on the ridge. Someone was standing in the distance again, sunlight flashing off the glass in their hand. Only now they weren't at Tower 8. They were standing exactly where the fire had burned through the trees, where the smoke still curled from the soil. And this time, they weren't signaling. They were watching, perfectly still. I radioed base again, desperate now. This is Tower 4, requesting immediate confirmation. Do you have anyone posted near the south ridge? Anyone at all? A long pause, then a soft click, followed by my own voice repeating the same words back to me. This is Tower 4, requesting immediate confirmation. I froze. The playback was perfect, even the shaky breath between words. But it wasn't coming from my radio. It was coming from the woods. I stepped to the window. The figure was gone, only the faint shimmer of light where it had stood. Like the air itself was bending. Now, at night, the flashes come from different directions. Sometimes east, sometimes west, sometimes all at once, as if the whole forest is alive with silent signals, waiting for me to answer back. But I won't. Not again. Because I finally understood what the pattern meant. 1, pause. 1, long pause. It wasn't a message. It was a reply. And whatever's out there in those woods, it's still waiting for mine. The first time it happened, I thought it was a trick of the wind. I was leaning against the railing of the tower, staring down at the smoldering ridge where the fires had burned the night before. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Even the birds seemed to have fled. I picked up the radio. Standard check-in. Tower 4 to base. Visuals remained steady on the south ridge. No movement aside from the smoldering. Static hissed back at me. Then, faintly, a voice. Tower 4, this is Tower 4. Confirmed visuals. I froze. The words were mine. Same pitch. Same pauses. Same shaky breath I always had when reading logs or calling in observations. It wasn't a tape. It wasn't delayed. It was live. Bass. I said, my hand shaking. Nothing. The voice repeated. Confirmed visuals. It wasn't just mimicry. It was asking a question. My own words. I set the radio down, leaned back against the railing, and tried to convince myself I was imagining it. But then the forest stirred. A low hum rose from the treetops. Subtle at first, almost inaudible, and beneath it, movement. I raised the binoculars. The south ridge had shifted. The firelight I thought had died out was pulsing again. Not like flames, not like anything natural, but like the air itself was glowing, catching every shadow and throwing it toward me. Then, across the ridge, I saw it, the other tower. Tower 8. It shouldn't exist anymore. But there it was, dark against the sky, weatherwood glinting with a strange orange light, and someone or something stood on the balcony. I froze. The figure was tall, bent slightly forward. Its arms hung low, its head tilted in a way that didn't feel human. It didn't move, but it watched. I picked up the radio again. Tower 8, this is Tower 4. Do you copy? Static, then my voice. Clear, sharp, answering me from the other tower. Tower 4, this is Tower 4. Do you copy? I staggered back, heart pounding. I wasn't calling anyone. No one was up there. No one could be. The tower had been abandoned for decades. I tried to calm myself. Maybe it was interference. Maybe some old repeater line had fused signals, looping my voice back to me. But the tone, the hesitation before the word copy, was identical to how I had said it just moments ago. Too exact, too precise. I called again, slower this time. Careful. Tower 8, I need a status check. Is someone there? Static first. Then a whisper, just under the radio hiss. Do you see it? I froze. Not my voice. Not anyone's I'd ever known. Soft, malevolent, but familiar. It sounded like the echo of my own fear. I pressed the radio tighter to my mouth. Who is this? No reply, but the static shifted, like something moving beneath the surface. And then I heard it, a faint scraping, low and deliberate, coming from the floorboards of the other tower. I couldn't see what was happening. The ridge between us was too far, the forest too thick. And yet I felt it, every creak of wood, every shiver of metal in the distance, every whisper to the static, like it was reaching toward me. I grabbed my binoculars and trained them on the other tower. The figure moved. Not walking, not climbing, just sliding. A sway of its body, unnaturally fluid, like it wasn't bound by bones. Then it stopped and raised an arm. It wasn't waving. It wasn't signaling. It was pointing directly at me. I dropped the binoculars. My hand shook so hard I could barely reach for the radio again. And when I finally pressed it to my mouth, my voice came out too loud, too sharp, trembling. Tower 8. Who's up there? Identify yourself. Static. Then my voice. Again. Tower 4. Who's up there? Identify yourself. I screamed into it, realizing the echo wasn't just words. It was my tone, my panic, mirrored back at me. And beneath it, subtle, slow, deliberate, was a shift in the sound, almost as if the other side were breathing through my own words. Then the echo paused, long enough for the forest to settle, and a single sentence came back, clear and slow. Step down. Join me. The words weren't mine. They were wrong in every way that matters. But I knew them. I had said them before. I had dreamt them before. And yet I had never spoken them aloud. I felt my knees weaken. I stumbled toward the ladder, heart hammering. Thoughts scrambled. Something out there knew me. Something that shouldn't exist. And it was speaking through me. The fire on the south ridge flared higher, orange and white streaks crawling up the trunks of dead trees. I could see shapes in the smoke. Figures, twisting, bending toward the other tower. They weren't human, not completely, but they moved with intent. I pressed the radio to my ear. This isn't real, I whispered. It's just interference. Some kind of trick. Then the voice came again, slower this time, softer. It wasn't echoing. It was direct, inside my head. You're late. I dropped the radio. It hit the floor with a hollow clatter. And the sound, my voice, didn't stop echoing. Tower 8. I'm late. I'm late. It rolled through the cabin, bouncing off walls, off ceiling, into my ears until I couldn't tell if I was speaking or listening. I stumbled back to the window. Through the haze of the ridge, I saw movement at the far edge. The other tower's balcony now empty, but below it, the forest seemed to pulse. Shadows stretching, pulling themselves toward the ruins of Tower 8. Toward me. I wanted to climb down. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. The echo had a weight, heavy, pulling, anchoring me. And then I realized the signal flashes weren't over. They were here. Every tree, every boulder, every brush flickering orange as if catching the pattern of the firelight from the previous nights. One. Pause. One. Long pause. Like a heartbeat. Not theirs. Mine. I put the binoculars to my eyes again. The ridge seemed closer. The trees thinner. And there, standing among them, a reflection. Tall, still, shoulders slouched, head tilted. But when it moved, it wasn't walking. It was sliding toward me. Smooth, silent, unnatural. I dropped the binoculars. Everything blurred. The echo of my own voice on the radio screamed through me. Step down. Join me. Step down. Join me. I ran to the ladder. The cabin floor beneath me seemed to bend and shiver. The walls groaned. Even the radio hummed. Static spilling out like smoke. I climbed, every rung shaking beneath me, my breath ragged. I reached the top, looked out. Nothing. The other tower stood empty. The south ridge smoldered in ghost orange light. No figure. No signal. Then, from below, a faint voice, my voice, carried up the ladder. Soft, calm, calling my name. I froze. It knew where I was. It had been following me this whole time. And the radio, the fires, the flashes, they weren't warnings. They were invitations. I went back inside, grabbed the radio one last time, pressed the button, Tower 4 to base. Do you copy? Static, then unmistakable. Tower 4, do you copy? Not an echo, not a voice repeating me. The words were mine, spoken from the other tower, from somewhere I couldn't see, from somewhere I couldn't reach. I didn't answer, because I knew if I did, I'd be joining it. And whatever that is, whatever waits out there among the echoes and the signal fires, it doesn't leave anyone behind. I left the radio on the desk. The static hummed softly, almost like a lullaby. I stepped to the window and stared at the ridge until the first light of dawn broke. And I knew tonight it would call again, and the echo would answer, because it always does. They transferred me to night patrol 3 weeks ago, said it would build character. I think it was just punishment. Small town politics. You cross the wrong person, you get the worst post. For me, that post was Hollow Creek Cemetery. It sat on the edge of town, surrounded by thick pines and fog that never seemed to lift. They said the fog came from the river that ran beneath the hill. But I never bought that. It wasn't river fog. It was heavier, like something breathing against the ground. The old caretaker used to live there, a man named Fletcher. He was found dead last winter, face down in the snow, halfway between the caretaker's shed and the graveyard gate. Heart attack, they said, but when I saw the photos at the station, his eyes were open, wide, like he'd seen something coming out of the dark. They never replaced him, just locked up the shed and left the place to rot. When I got the assignment, Sergeant Dale handed me the keys and said, keep an eye out during the storms. Kids like to mess around up there. Break headstones, spray paint stuff. He didn't look at me when he said it. Just chewed his gum, eyes on the floor. That was the first red flag. The second came the night I actually went up there. It was raining hard. The kind of rain that eats sound. I parked my cruiser at the gate. Headlights slicing through the fog. The iron bars were rusted. The chains hanging loose. Someone had cut them before, and the repair job was half-assed. I stepped out, rain dripping off my hat brim, flashlight in hand. My boots sank into the soft mud as I pushed open the gate. It creaked like it hadn't been touched in years. Sheriff's Department. I called out, mostly to hear my own voice. Anyone here? Nothing. Just the sound of rain. against stone. The place was bigger than I thought, maybe 2 acres, with old headstones leaning at strange angles. Some had sunk into ground, swallowed by years of storms. The names were faded. The dates older than anyone alive here now. There was one tall monument near the center, a family crypt. The Wendell family, I think. The inscription was half worn off, but I could make out the date, 1894. I swept a light across the grass. No footprints, no beer cans, no sign of vandals. Still, I felt watched. You know that sense when someone's just behind you, not close enough to touch, but close enough that your body reacts before your mind does? That's how I felt walking through those graves. The fog shifted in slow ribbons, wrapping around the stones, swallowing my light. And every time I blinked, I thought the rows had changed, like the markers had moved a few inches while I wasn't looking. Ridiculous, I told myself. Just nerves, just the rain and the shadows. But then I saw it. At first, I thought it was lightning. A flicker of white at the far end of the cemetery. Then again, but slower this time, a pale movement behind one of the angel statues. I called out again. Sheriff's Department. Come out where I can see you. No answer. I moved toward it, careful with each step. My beam caught the edge of the angel's wings. Then the curve of a face cracked marble and moss. But behind it, where the ground dipped near the trees, there was something else. A figure. For a second, I thought it was a person. Someone crouched low, their back to me. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't moving right. Too stiff, too still. I stopped maybe 10 feet away. The rain softened for a moment, like the air itself was holding its breath. The figure turned. It wasn't a person. It was a coat, a deputy's coat, hanging from a branch, torn, soaked through, badge still pinned to the chest. I reached out, heart pounding. The name tag read Fletcher, the caretaker. The wind picked up, making the fabric twist like it was still being worn. I don't know why, but I backed away. Every instinct, I had screamed to leave it there. That's when my radio hissed to life. Unit 4, come in. You there, Sam? Dale's voice, but distorted, buried under static. Yeah, I'm here, I said, eyes still on the coat. You guys ever log this? Log what? The caretaker's jacket. It's hanging out here. There was a pause. Then, we collected his belongings months ago, Sam. I froze. The rain came back harder, washing mud down the slope. I turned the beam around, scanning the graves again. The coat was still there, but the branch it hung from was gone. I know how that sounds. Maybe it broke. Maybe I imagined it. But I swear, I saw it twist into the fog, like something dragging away. That was enough for me. I decided to sweep once more and head back. I didn't want to be the guy who radioed in ghosts. But as I moved past the Wendell crypt, I noticed something different. The door, a heavy iron gate, was open, wide open. I hadn't touched it. My flashlight shook in my hand as I aimed it inside. The stairs led down into pitch darkness. The air smelled of rust and old flowers. There were marks on the walls, too, deep scratches, like someone had clawed their way out. I told myself it was vandals, just kids trying to scare people. But deep down, I knew kids don't go carving out stone with their bare hands. I should have called in right then, but instead, I stepped inside. I don't even know why. Curiosity? Stupidity? Maybe both. Each step creaked beneath my boots, old with giving under my weight. My light caught the edges of metal coffins, nameplates dulled with age. Then I heard it, a sound from deeper in, faint, steady, like someone breathing through a wet cloth. I froze. Hello? The sound stopped, for a long moment. The only thing I could hear was the rain hammering above and my own heartbeat echoing down there. Then, from the darkness, a whisper, low, shaky, right behind my ear. Go back. I spun around, light cutting through empty air. Nothing there, just cold stone and dust floating like ash. I ran, didn't even think. I burst out of that crypt and into the storm, gasping, soaked to the bone. When I reached the gate, I saw my cruiser still idling, but the headlights were off. I hadn't turned them off. The door was open. Inside, the radio crackled again. Same voice. Sam, come back inside. But it didn't sound like Dale anymore. It sounded like something trying to sound like him. I slammed the door shut, put the car in reverse, and didn't stop until the cemetery was a blur in the mirror. The next morning, I went back with Sergeant Dale and another officer. The gate was chained again. My tire tracks were gone. The coat? Gone too. I asked him if anyone else had been assigned to that post before me. He said no. Then he looked at me strangely and asked, "You sure you went out there last night?" I told him yes. He just nodded, slow and careful, like he didn't believe me. That was 2 weeks ago. Now, every night, I still hear the rain on the roof of my trailer, and sometimes I swear I can hear a voice under it, faint, telling me to come back. And last night, when I checked my locker at the station, there was a wet patch on the floor, and something folded neatly on the bench. A torn deputy's coat, with my name on the badge. I didn't want to go back to that cemetery, but the chief said we needed to finish the report from that night, so they couldn't find anything unusual, and maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. He said it kindly, like he was trying not to embarrass me, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. The same kind of look people give someone they think is losing it. So when he told me to do one more patrol, just one, I said yes, because I wanted to prove it. Prove that something was wrong out there. It rained the whole drive up. Not a clean, steady rain. More like a constant drizzle that stuck to the windshield no matter how fast the wipers went. The sky looked bruised, heavy with clouds that sagged low over the trees. The sign for Hollow Creek Cemetery barely showed through the mist. The letters were chipped, half covered in moss. The gate hung open again. Even though I'd watched Dale lock it himself last time, my gut told me to turn around. But I didn't. I parked the cruiser right by the gate this time. Lights off. I didn't even bother with the radio. I didn't want to hear that voice again. I stepped out into the rain. The ground squelched under my boots, water pooling over my shoes. The fog had grown thicker, hugging the earth, crawling between the gravestones like it was alive. I could hear the rain falling, but not hitting the ground. It was like it vanished before it touched the soil. That's when I noticed the silence. No frogs, no wind, not even thunder. Just rain. I started walking toward the Wendell crypt. My flashlight beam wavered over the stones. Most of the names were the same ones I'd seen before, faded, unreadable. But when I reached the center path, something fell off. The rows looked cleaner. The grass had been trimmed. Fresh mud had been turned up like someone had been digging recently. That's when I saw the first one. A new headstone. Still wet, the letters dark from rain. Officer James R. Dale. Born 1971, died. The date field was blank. My chest tightened. I stared at it. Blinking rain out of my eyes, waiting for it to make sense. It didn't. I turned and saw another beside it. Deputy Mark Watson. Another blank date. Then another, and another, all lined in a neat row, the soil dark and soft in front of them. All names of officers from our department. I felt my stomach twist. There were 12 stones total. When I reached the last one, my knees almost gave out. Deputy Samuel Hope. My name. Same spelling. Same middle initial. Only the date of death was blank. Waiting. I took a step back, breath shaking. My flashlight trembled in my hand, and for a moment the beam caught something carved faintly under name. A small line of words, etched lighter than the rest. I leaned closer, claimed by the watcher. The letters were crude, like someone had carved them fast, with a knife or a nail. That's when I noticed movement behind the row. A shadow. I froze, squinting through the rain. Something stood between the stones, tall, still, like a figure wrapped in darkness. It didn't move when I called out. "Who's there?" The light wavered, catching glimpses, wet cloth, a shape too narrow to be human. Its head tilted, slow and deliberate. I stepped back, heartbeat drumming in my throat. Stay right there. But it didn't listen. It started walking, no, sliding forward. The sound it made wasn't footsteps. It was more like dragging fabric through mud. I blinked and it was gone. The beam of my flashlight hit empty air. Just the graves again. But the rain had stopped. Not slowed, stopped. Completely. The drops hung in the air, frozen. each one glinting like glass. My breath came out in short bursts, loud in the stillness. I looked up at the sky. The clouds weren't moving anymore either. Everything had just stopped. I turned back toward the path. But something had changed. The headstones weren't where they'd been. They were closer, close enough that when I spun around, the one with my name was right in front of me. The words looked deeper now, freshly cut, and beneath claim by the watcher, a new line had appeared. Tonight, I dropped the flashlight. When I picked it up, I saw that the ground under my name wasn't flat anymore. The soil had sunk a little, like it was breathing. I stumbled back, trying to keep my balance, and caught sight of the Wendell crypt through the fog. Its iron door was open again, but not the way it had been before. It was wide open, swinging gently even though there was no wind. Something inside was glowing, a dull orange light, flickering, like fire underwater. My brain told me to leave, to run, but my body didn't listen. I walked toward it, each step sinking deeper into the mud. The glow got brighter. The air grew thick, heavy with that same smell of rust and wet flowers. Inside, the crypt wasn't empty anymore. The coffins were gone. In their place were more stones, rough, unpolished, but with the same names. And in the center, that same coat I'd found before, hanging upright, like someone invisible was wearing it. It was soaked. The badge gleamed faintly. Fletcher's coat. Only now, the name tag had been torn off. A new one was sewn in. Sam Holt. My breath caught. I took one step closer. And that's when I heard it. A voice behind me, low, whispering through the still air. You shouldn't have come back. I spun around, flashlight shaking. The fog inside the doorway had thickened, forming shapes. At first, I thought it was smoke. Then faces began to appear, faint outlines, pressed against the air like something trapped behind glass. They were mouthing words. Silent, but I could read them. Claimed, claimed, claimed. The coat moved. Not much. Just a twitch, like something inside it had shifted. The sleeves hung heavy, and the badge began to rattle against the fabric. I stumbled backward, tripping on the edge of a grave marker that hadn't been there before. My hands hit the wet ground, sinking deep into the soil, and when I pulled them up, they weren't covered in mud. They were covered in ash. The rain started again, harder this time. I scrambled to my feet, running toward the gate. My flashlight died halfway. The world blinked in and out of blackness as lightning flickered overhead. Every flash showed me something new. The grave shifting behind me, headstones pushing to the ground like teeth. I could hear the sound again, that dragging, wet scrape following close behind. By the time I reached the cruiser, my clothes were soaked through and my lungs burned like fire. I slammed the door, turned the key, nothing. The car wouldn't start. The radio crackled to life. Sam. It was Dale's voice. Dale, I need backup. I need. You shouldn't have gone back, Sam. The voice warped, deepened, turned into something that didn't sound human anymore. The ground remembers its own. The rain outside shifted. It wasn't falling anymore. It was rising. The drops were lifting from the ground, reversing upward, spinning around the car like smoke. I could see shapes forming in it. Faces again, mouths moving without sound. The cruiser's headlights flickered on by themselves. They pointed straight toward the cemetery gate. And there, standing in the glow, was the figure. Still, watching. It raised one arm, slow and stiff, and pointed at me. Then everything went black. I woke up in my trailer. No memory of driving back. No clothes, no mud, no sign of the cruiser. Just my badge, sitting on the table beside the bed, wet. When I got to the station later, no one said anything about last night. The chief said Dale had called in sick. Mark II. I asked if they'd been to the cemetery. He said no. Then he frowned and told me the strangest thing. Said there were only 9 deputies on the roster now. 9. I didn't argue. But when I checked the apartment wall, the one with all our photos and nameplates, I saw mine was gone. There was an empty space where it used to be, and scratched into wood beneath it, faint but real, was a single word. Claimed. I didn't tell anyone about the names, about the headstones or the coat, or the voice on the radio. I tried to. I even went into the station that morning, ready to explain everything. But when I saw their faces, calm, normal, untouched, I couldn't. They wouldn't have believed me anyway. Hell, I barely believed it myself. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about that last grave. The one with my name on it. The one that said tonight. That night came and went. I didn't die, but I didn't sleep either. For 2 days, I kept seeing things, small, harmless things that didn't add up. My reflection in the bathroom mirror would lag behind for half a second. My badge, which I swore I'd left on the nightstand, kept showing up in my jacket pocket. And the smell, that heavy mix of rust and wet dirt, never left my clothes, no matter how many times I washed them. On the third night, a storm rolled in. The kind of storm that turns the sky green before it breaks. And that's when the call came in. "Sam, you're still covering Hollow Creek, right?" It was dispatch. Her voice sounded flat, like the line was underwater. I hesitated. "Yeah, why?" "Chief wants you to check something." Said a driver saw someone digging near the north fence. Probably kids. My stomach dropped when, about 10 minutes ago, backup's on the way. Backup, I knew what that meant. It meant no one was actually coming. The rain hit before I even reached the main road. Big, heavy drops that made the wipers useless. The headlights bounced off sheets of water, and the trees on both sides looked like walls closing in. When I pulled up to the gate, it was open again, wide this time, like someone wanted me to come through. The cruiser lights flickered as I stepped out. My flashlight caught the glint of metal, a shovel, lying halfway down the hill, still wet from use. The mud was churned up with footprints, fresh ones. I followed them, one slow step at a time, trying to steady my breathing. The prints led past the Wendell crypt, straight toward the far edge of the cemetery, the part that always stayed soft, even when the ground was dry. That's when I saw it, a patch of dirt darker than the rest, freshly turned. Someone had dug there recently. Deep, the mound beside it was still dripping from the rain. The grave didn't have a marker yet, just a small wooden stake with a number carved into it. My number, badge number 1472. I just stood there, rain soaking through my hat, through my jacket, until the cold finally reached my bones. At first I thought it was a prank, some sick joke from one of the guys. But no one knew my badge number except the department, and none of them would come out here. Not at night. I knelt down, shining my light into the hole. The soil was slick red-brown, almost the same color as dried blood. Something metallic glinted near the bottom. I reached for it, my fingers sinking into the mud. It wasn't just a rock, it was metal, carved metal. When I pulled it free, I realized it wasn't part of a coffin. It was a plaque, a small brass plate, polished smooth despite the grime. My name was engraved on it. Below it, the same phrase again, claimed by the watcher. The rain hit harder, and for a second, I thought I heard breathing. Not mine, deeper, heavier. I turned, light sweeping over the trees. No one there, just fog and shadows. I wanted to leave. Every part of me screamed get back in the car, drive home, quit this job, this town, everything. But then something caught my eye at the far end of the dig site. Another grave, older, half collapsed from the rain. A hand, just barely visible, reaching out through the soil. I froze. My heart stuttered, then raced. It wasn't bone, it looked fresh, pinkish, with dirt still clinging to the skin. I stumbled closer, too terrified to stop. The fingers twitched. I swear to God they twitched. Then they went still. I reached into the mud again, I don't even know why, and brushed the dirt away from the wrist. There was a patch of dark blue fabric under it, a uniform sleeve, and right above it, a badge, my badge, number 1472. I fell back, dropping the flashlight. The beam rolled, throwing light across the graves. That's when I realized how wrong the ground looked. The soil wasn't flat anywhere. There were bulges, shapes, pressing upward from beneath. It looked like the earth was full of bodies trying to reach the surface. The air turned thick, humming like the static before lightning. And the mud began to shift again, rising in slow, uneven breaths. The sound that came out of it wasn't quite human. A low, wet whisper. Claimed. I scrambled to my feet, slipping in the muck, flashlight swinging wildly. The whisper came again, louder this time, from everywhere. Claimed. I ran. I don't even remember the path. Just flashes of stone and rain, and that voice echoing off the trees. When I got to the cruiser, the lights were already on. The wipers were moving. Even though I hadn't left the keys inside, the door was unlocked. When I climbed in, I saw something sitting on the passenger seat, a small pile of wet dirt, and resting on top of it, half buried, was my badge, the one still pinned to my chest. I pulled the pin free, checked the number. Both were 1472. Identical. I don't remember driving back. I don't remember leaving the cemetery. I just remember the rain. And that voice. The next morning, I went to the department. The chief wasn't there. Neither was dispatch. The whole station felt wrong. Quiet, hollow. The coffee in the pot was cold. But it was still half full. Papers on desks. Half-written reports. It looked like everyone had just walked out. I found a personnel log on the wall, the one with all our names and numbers. There were only 3 now. Mine wasn't one of them. I stared at the empty space beside number 1472. Someone had scratched it out with a knife. The groove's still fresh. That's when I noticed my boots, caked with dried mud. I hadn't even cleaned them. I sat down at my desk, trying to calm my breathing, but something felt wrong under my feet. The floorboards, soft, uneven. I peeled back the rug. Beneath it, the wood was split open, the earth beneath freshly disturbed. Dark soil, wet, and carved into one of the planks. In the same shaky letters as before were the words, "The ground remembers its own." That night, I dreamed of digging, not of graves, but the sound, the shovel biting into dirt, the earth groaning as it gave way. I woke to find my hands blistered, the smell of wet soil filling the room. When I turned on the lamp, there was dirt under my nails, fresh, cold, and beside the bed, a small brass plaque, gleaming faintly in the light. My name, my badge number, the same words etched beneath, claimed by the watcher. I tried to throw it away. I drove out past the town limits, past the old mills, and tossed it into the river. But the next morning, when I stepped outside for work, it was sitting on the hood of my cruiser, clean, dry, waiting. I don't go near Hollow Creek anymore. I don't patrol, I don't answer calls. But sometimes when it rains hard enough, I hear digging again. Not far away, close, right under my trailer. And when I wake up, there's always mud by the door. Boot prints, my size. I don't remember when I stopped checking in with dispatch. Maybe it was after the 3rd storm. Maybe it was the night I realized a voice on the radio didn't sound like her anymore. They said I went missing that night, that I drove out past Hollow Creek and never came back. But I did come back. I think I did. It's hard to tell now. The official report said my cruiser was found on the old dirt road, about half a mile from the cemetery gate. Driver's door open, headlights on, no footprints, no tire tracks leading away. They searched the woods for 2 days before calling it off. The ground was too soft from the rain. They said, too many false trails. But the weirdest part wasn't the car. It was the radio log. Dispatch had recorded one last transmission from my unit. Unit 4. Timestamp 3:47 a.m. Only, by then I was already gone. I didn't hear the call myself, obviously. But they played it later for the investigation, for the press, for whoever still cared to know what happened. It started like any other check-in. My voice calm, routine. Unit 4, status clear Hollow Creek. Then a pause. Rain in the background. The sound of wind over the mic. Then another voice. Low, breathy. Almost a whisper. Not clear. That was it. Static after that. They said, maybe the radio glitched. Maybe it picked up a cross frequency from another channel. But no other unit was on the air that night. And no one could explain why I didn't answer. I don't remember that transmission. But I remember being there. I remember the fog. The stillness. The way the rain sounded like it was falling inside my head instead of outside the car. I remember looking in the mirror and seeing headlights behind me. Too close. Too bright. But when I turned around, there was no road. just water. I must have blacked out after that, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. I was standing in the middle of the cemetery. No cruiser, no radio, no memory of how I got there, just the sound of shovels. Dozens of them. I followed the noise to the backfield, and there they were, shadows bending and rising in the mist, like men working a dig site. Each time a shovel hit the ground, I could feel it in my chest, a dull thud that matched my heartbeat. They didn't look up. They didn't stop. And when I got closer, I realized they weren't digging new graves. They were filling them. The holes were already occupied. I could see the outlines, pale shapes under the dirt, arms bent at wrong angles, the mud sinking as it covered their faces. I tried to shout, tried to stop them, but my voice didn't come out right. It sounded distant, muffled, like it wasn't leaving my throat. One of them finally turned toward me. Not all the way, just enough of the light to catch his face. It was Dale. His eyes were open, staring straight ahead, but they weren't seeing me. They were glassy, empty. His lips moved. No sound. Then, as if the air itself translated for me, I understood what he was saying. End watch. When I woke again, it was dark. The sky was flat and colorless. No stars, no rain, just a faint sound of static in the distance, the kind that buzzes in your teeth more than your ears. My boots were heavy with mud, my badge caked in something darker. I started walking. Didn't know where to go, just knew I couldn't stay there. The trees thinned out after a while, and I saw lights ahead. For a moment, I thought it was a station, but when I got closer, I realized it was my trailer. Only it wasn't quite right. The door was open, the porch light flickered, and the ground in front of it had been dug up, a neat rectangle of turned soil. A grave. My grave. There was no nameplate, no marker, just a wooden post with something nailed to it. A small piece of metal glinting under the light. My badge. Number 1472. I went inside. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Coffee cup on the counter. Jacket over the chair. But the air felt stale, like no one had breathed there in weeks. On the table was my radio. The same one I'd lost. It was on. The speaker hissed with low static. The little green light blinking. Then a voice came through. Soft. Familiar. Unit 4 status check. You copy. I froze. It was dispatch. But not her. It sounded like her voice played back through a dream. Slightly off. Drawn out. I didn't answer. The radio clicked again. Unit 4, come in. Status clear. I picked it up slowly, my hand shaking. Who is this? I whispered. There was a pause. Then a faint laugh. Quiet, dry, almost like a sigh. End of watch, Sam. The radio went dead. I sat there for what felt like hours, just listening, waiting for another voice. When the silence finally broke, it wasn't from the radio. It came from the door. 3 slow knocks. Not loud, just enough to tell me someone, or something, was on the other side. I didn't answer, didn't move. The knocks came again. Then a voice, not a stranger's. Mine, Unit 4, status clear. The same words from the transmission. My own voice calm, steady, then quieter, not clear. The light flickered. The air grew thick. The smell of wet soil filled the room again. I looked down at my hands. Dirt under the nails. Fresh. I stumbled back, hitting the wall, knocking over the radio. It landed hard, static screaming from the speaker. And underneath that noise, I heard something else. Digging. Steady. Rhythmic. It was coming from outside, near the open grave. I went to the window. The ground was moving, the soil shifting, heaving upward like something was crawling out. Then I saw it. A hand, mud-covered, pulling itself free, and pinned to the sleeve of its jacket. My badge. The radio hissed again behind me. Unit 4, respond. I didn't turn. Couldn't. The digging stopped. Silence. Then the front door creaked open, slow and deliberate. I heard boots step inside. Heavy, wet. The smell hit first. That mix of mud, rot, and something metallic. Then breathing. Right behind me. I turned, and there I was. Same uniform. Same mud-streaked face. Only the eyes were wrong. Empty. He raised his hand, my hand, and held out the radio. It crackled once, then spoke again in that soft, broken voice. End watch. The sound faded, replaced by the slow hum of rain starting again. He dropped the radio at my feet, then turned and walked back outside into the grave. The earth closed over him like water, and the rain didn't stop for 3 days. They said when they found the trailer, it looked abandoned. No sign of struggle. No prints. Just a radio, still on, playing static. And one set of boot prints leading from the porch into the yard. Then nothing. Later, they logged a final entry in the system. Timestamp 3:47 a.m., same as before. Unit 4, end of watch. That's how they closed my file. My badge number retired. My name carved into the wall at the station. But sometimes when it rains hard enough, dispatch still gets a ping from Unit 4. A faint signal. Always the same words. Status clear. Then a pause. Not clear. And then silence. I wasn't supposed to get Unit 9. They told me it was just a temporary transfer. A backup car until mine came out of the shop. Nothing more. But even before I saw it, I could tell something wasn't right. The guys at the station had this way of avoiding eye contact. Whenever I mentioned it, little smirks, quick glances, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. I thought they were messing with me at first. Rookie hazing. Then I saw the car. It was parked behind the motor pool, half buried in the dust. The number 9 had been repainted, but you could still see the outline of the old one underneath. Cracked, uneven. The hood was dented, and the light bar leaned slightly to one side, like it was tired of holding itself up. The air around it felt heavier somehow. Still, when I opened the door, that feeling got worse. It smelled like wet metal and old smoke, the kind of scent that doesn't fade even after years of cleaning. The seats were worn down, the vinyl split in a few places, but the worst part was the driver's side. There was a dark stain on the floor mat, not big, but deep, like it had soaked through everything. I told myself it was oil, had to be, but when I touched it, it felt tacky. I pulled my hand back fast, wiped it on my pants, and told myself not to think about it. That night, I asked around. Dale, the night sergeant, was the only one who didn't pretend not to hear me. He was an older guy, quiet, always chewing toothpicks like he was trying to quit smoking but hadn't made up his mind yet. When I asked about Unit 9, he didn't look at me, just said, "You got the short straw, huh?" Then after a pause, "Keep the windows down. And if the radio starts talking on its own, don't answer it." I laughed. He didn't. I didn't find out what he meant until my second shift. It was a slow night, just rain and static on the scanner. I was parked outside the diner off Route 6, sipping bad coffee and trying to stay awake. The wipers kept dragging across the glass, leaving streaks that blurred the lights from the gas station across the road. I remember feeling weirdly calm, like I'd finally settled in. Then the radio crackled. Unit 9 respond. It was dispatch. Or, at least, it sounded like her. But something was off. Her voice was lower, stretched, like she was speaking through water. I picked up the mic. "Unit 9, go ahead." Static. Then, copy. 10 to 50 on Hollow Creek. Same location. I froze. Hollow Creek wasn't on my route. And same location? Same as what? Before I could ask, the radio cut out again. I tried calling it in, but the channel was dead. No response. No background noise. Nothing. Just silence. I sat there for a minute, listening. Then, against my better judgment, I turned the key and started driving. The road to Hollow Creek was barely more than a path. Trees crowding on both sides, their branches scraping the roof of the cruiser. The rain got worse the closer I got. I don't know why I kept going. Maybe it was the training. Maybe curiosity. Or maybe something in that voice had pulled me out there. When I reached the creek, I saw headlights through the fog. One car, crumpled, half in the ditch. For a second, I thought I was the first one there. Then I noticed the markings. Unit 9, same number, same dents, same tilted light bar. But I was in Unit 9. I sat there, staring at the other car, trying to make sense of it. My hands were slick on the steering wheel. I got out. The air smelled like mud and hot rubber. Rain hit the broken windshield in soft, hollow taps. The driver's door was open. Inside, the seat was soaked red. There was a badge on the floor, half buried in dirt and glass. I picked it up. Number 1472. I didn't recognize the number, but it felt familiar. Then I heard movement, footsteps behind me. I turned, but there was nothing, just fog and rain. Then the radio in the wrecked car hissed to life. A voice came through, warped and quiet. Unit 9, end of watch. The sound made the air tighten in my chest. I stepped back toward my cruiser, but the headlights flickered and went out. The speaker hissed with low static, the little green light blinking. Then a voice came through, soft, familiar. Unit 4, status check. You copy. I froze. It was dispatch, but not her. It sounded like her voice played back through a dream, slightly off, drawn out. I didn't answer. The radio clicked again. Unit 4, come in. Status clear? I picked it up slowly, my hand shaking. Who is this? I whispered. There was a pause, then a faint laugh. Quiet, dry, almost like a sigh. End of watch, Sam. The radio went dead. I sat there for what felt like hours, just listening, waiting for another voice. When the silence finally broke, it wasn't from the radio. It came from the door. 3 slow knocks. Not loud, just enough to tell me someone, or something, was on the other side. I didn't answer, didn't move. The knocks came again. Then a voice, not a stranger's. Mine, Unit 4, status clear. The same words from the transmission. My own voice, calm, steady, then quieter, not clear. The light flickered. The air grew thick. The smell of wet soil filled the room again. I looked down at my hands. Dirt under the nails. Fresh. I stumbled back, hitting the wall, knocking over the radio. It landed hard, static screaming from the speaker. And underneath that noise, I heard something else. Digging. Steady. Rhythmic. It was coming from outside, near the open grave. I went to the window. The ground was moving, the soil shifting, heaving upward like something was crawling out. Then I saw it. A hand, mud-covered, pulling itself free, and pinned to the sleeve of its jacket. My badge. The radio hissed again behind me. Unit 4, respond. I didn't turn. Couldn't. The digging stopped. Silence. Then the front door creaked open, slow and deliberate. I heard boots step inside. Heavy, wet. The smell hit first. That mix of mud, rot, and something metallic. Then breathing. Right behind me. I turned, and there I was. Same uniform. Same mud-streaked face. Only the eyes were wrong. Empty. He raised his hand, my hand, and held out the radio. It crackled once, then spoke again in that soft, broken voice. End of watch. The sound faded, replaced by the slow hum of rain starting again. He dropped the radio at my feet, then turned and walked back outside, into the grave. The earth closed over him like water, and the rain didn't stop for 3 days. They said when they found the trailer, it looked abandoned. No sign of struggle. No prints. Just a radio, still on, playing static. And one set of boot prints leading from the porch into the yard. Then nothing. Later, they logged a final entry in the system. Timestamp 3:47 a.m., same as before. Unit 4, end of watch. That's how they closed my file. My badge number retired. My name carved into the wall at the station. But sometimes when it rains hard enough, dispatch still gets a ping from Unit 4. A faint signal. Always the same words. Status clear. Then a pause. Not clear. And then silence. I wasn't supposed to get Unit 9. They told me it was just a temporary transfer. A backup car until mine came out of the shop. Nothing more. But even before I saw it, I could tell something wasn't right. The guys at the station had this way of avoiding eye contact whenever I mentioned it. Little smirks, quick glances, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. I thought they were messing with me at first. Rookie hazing. Then I saw the car. It was parked behind the motor pool, half buried in the dust. The number 9 had been repainted. but you could still see the outline of the old one underneath. Cracked, uneven. The hood was dented, and the light bar leaned slightly to one side, like it was tired of holding itself up. The air around it felt heavier somehow. Still, when I opened the door, that feeling got worse. It smelled like wet metal and old smoke, the kind of scent that doesn't fade even after years of cleaning. The seats were worn down, the vinyl split in a few places, but the worst part was the driver's side. There was a dark stain on the floor mat, not big, but deep, like it had soaked through everything. I told myself it was oil, had to be, but when I touched it, it felt tacky. I pulled my hand back fast, wiped it on my pants, and told myself not to think about it. That night, I asked around. Dale, the night sergeant, was the only one who didn't pretend not to hear me. He was an older guy, quiet, always chewing toothpicks like he was trying to quit smoking but hadn't made up his mind yet. When I asked about Unit 9, he didn't look at me, just said, "You got the short straw, huh?" Then after a pause, "Keep the windows down. And if the radio starts talking on its own, don't answer it." I laughed. He didn't. I didn't find out what he meant until my second shift. It was a slow night, just rain and static on the scanner. I was parked outside the diner off Route 6, sipping bad coffee and trying to stay awake. The wipers kept dragging across the glass, leaving streaks that blurred the lights from the gas station across the road. I remember feeling weirdly calm, like I'd finally settled in. Then the radio crackled. Unit 9 respond. It was dispatch. Or, at least, it sounded like her. But something was off. Her voice was lower, stretched, like she was speaking through water. I picked up the mic. "Unit 9, go ahead." Static. Then, copy. 10 to 50 on Hollow Creek. Same location. I froze. Hollow Creek wasn't on my route. And same location? Same as what? Before I could ask, the radio cut out again. I tried calling it in, but the channel was dead. No response. No background noise. Nothing. Just silence. I sat there for a minute, listening. Then, against my better judgment, I turned the key and started driving. The road to Hollow Creek was barely more than a path. Trees crowding on both sides, their branches scraping the roof of the cruiser. The rain got worse the closer I got. I don't know why I kept going. Maybe it was the training. Maybe curiosity. Or maybe something in that voice had pulled me out there. When I reached the creek, I saw headlights through the fog. One car, crumpled, half in the ditch. For a second, I thought I was the first one there. Then I noticed the markings. Unit 9, same number, same dents, same tilted light bar. But I was in Unit 9. I sat there, staring at the other car, trying to make sense of it. My hands were slick on the steering wheel. I got out. The air smelled like mud and hot rubber. Rain hit the broken windshield in soft, hollow taps. The driver's door was open. Inside, the seat was soaked red. There was a badge on the floor, half buried in dirt and glass. I picked it up. Number 1472. I didn't recognize the number, but it felt familiar. Then I heard movement, footsteps behind me. I turned, but there was nothing, just fog and rain. Then the radio in the wrecked car hissed to life. A voice came through, warped and quiet. Unit 9, end of watch. The sound made the air tighten in my chest. I stepped back toward my cruiser, but the headlights flickered and went out. For a moment, the world was completely dark. Then my radio, the one in my car, turned on. Unit 9 respond. It was the same voice, the same tone, but it wasn't dispatch. It couldn't be. "Who is this?" I said. The reply came fast. Same location. And then a faint laugh, low, breathless, right next to my ear. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I remember was waking up back at the station. Dale was there. He didn't say anything for a long time, just stood at the door, watching me. Finally, he said, "You went out, didn't you?" I nodded. He sighed, rubbing his jaw. "You saw the wreck?" I asked how he knew. He looked at me then, really looked, and said, "Because everyone who drives that car ends up there." I didn't believe him. Not really, but the look in his eyes stuck with me. He'd seen something too. He told me the story. 2 years ago, a deputy named Harlan took Unit 9 out during a storm. Dispatch lost contact around midnight. They found the car at Hollow Creek. The next morning, flipped, half submerged. Harlan didn't make it. They said he must have swerved to miss something on the road. Only there were no skid marks. No sign he'd ever tried to stop. After that, no one wanted the car. But the department was short on units, so they cleaned it up and put it back in rotation. And every few months, when someone drew the short straw, it got assigned out again. Each one reported the same thing. Strange calls, voices on the radio, headlights in the mirror when the road was empty. One deputy swore she saw Harlan standing by the wreck, waving her down. Another said he heard his own voice calling for backup when no one else was around. I told Dale what I saw. The badge, the car, the voice. He just nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting it. Then he said something I'll never forget. Unit 9 doesn't break down. It brings you back. After that night, I asked to transfer. Anywhere, any shift. Didn't matter. They approved it, but not right away. I had to keep the car for 2 more weeks until the new unit came in. Every time I got in, I could feel it watching me. The hum of the engine sounded different, off rhythm. And sometimes when I turned the key, the radio would crackle just once, like it was remembering me. The last night before the transfer, I sat in the parking lot with the headlights off, just listening to the rain hit the roof. Then, faintly, the radio came alive again. Static, a breath. Then, Unit 9 respond. My chest tightened. I didn't answer. Didn't even move. The voice came again, softer this time. Same location. And for a moment, I thought I heard something else underneath. The sound of water, a car sinking, glass breaking. Then silence. I took the key out, stepped out of the cruiser, and walked away without looking back. The next morning, I got my new assignment. Unit 4. As I signed the paperwork, Dale passed by and gave me a small nod. I asked him what they were going to do with Unit 9. He didn't answer, just looked out the window toward the lot. The spot where it used to sit was empty. No one had moved it. No one had towed it. It was just gone. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm out on patrol, I still hear the radio click once, like it's picking up a signal. Then that same voice, faint, far away, but clear enough to understand. Unit 9 end the watch. I try to ignore it. But the part that gets me, the part one can't shake, is that sometimes, when I look in the rear view mirror, I swear I see another set of headlights following just behind, and they always disappear when I blink. I've never been able to explain it. Not fully. Not in a way that makes sense to anyone who hasn't seen it themselves. It started a few nights after I got Unit 4. At first, it was subtle. The kind of thing you tell yourself is fatigue, nerves, or maybe the after effects of seeing too much on the road. I'd be driving home late, headlights cutting through the fog, and I'd catch a flicker out of the corner of my eye, movement in the back seat. At first, I thought it was a trick of the mirrors, a shadow from the streetlights, a reflection from the dashboard. But the first time I really saw it, I knew it wasn't my imagination. It was raining, not the steady drizzle, but heavy, constant, like the sky itself had turned soft metal. I was heading south on Route 6, the radio silent, just a hum of tires over wet asphalt. I glanced in the rear view, and there it was, a shape. At first, I thought it was a trick of my own jacket draped over the passenger seat, but it was moving. The red lights from my own taillights reflected off something in the back, catching the contours of a form, a figure sitting upright, facing forward, but wrong. The uniform, it looked exactly like mine. The same badge, the same markings, even down the scuff on the knee of the pants. I jerked the wheel slightly, just to catch a better look. The figure didn't move, just sat there, still, watching, and then it was gone. I told myself I'd imagined it. Everyone says that, right? You're tired, stressed, your mind plays tricks. But the next night, it came back. I tried to ignore it, kept my eyes on the road, hands tight on the wheel. It didn't always appear in the same place. Sometimes it crouched low, just behind the driver's seat. Sometimes it seemed to float in the middle of the bench, legs folded under, staring straight ahead, always in my old uniform, always the red light flashing in the glass. I stopped checking the mirrors at some point, kept telling myself if I didn't look, it couldn't be real. But even without looking, I felt it, the weight of someone sitting there, the subtle pressure in the air, the faint rustle of fabric, and every time my chest would tighten, heartbeat quick, sweat under my hat, I knew what it meant. It was following me, waiting. One night, I tried to confront it. I stopped the cruiser at the edge of the old quarry, rain still falling in sheets, headlights cutting a path through the mist. I turned around slowly, gripping the wheel. The back seat was empty. Nothing. Relief washed over me. Then in the rear view, the flash of red. The uniform. My hands went numb on the wheel. I whispered, "What do you want?" No answer. Just a slow, deliberate hum of static from the radio. It wasn't plugged in. It wasn't on. But the sound came anyway. A low, wet breath. I slammed the car into drive and tore down the road. Rain hitting the windshield in staccato bursts. The lights in the rear view never left. I tried everything. I cleaned the cruiser inside and out, left the windows down at night, drove at high speeds, low speeds, always alone. But it didn't matter. Every night, it came back. And it wasn't just a shape anymore. Sometimes, I'd hear my own voice from the back seat, soft, echoed, calling my own name. Sam, Sam. I'd spin around, heart pounding, but the seat would be empty. Sometimes, I'd reach back, fingers brushing the leather, and feel nothing. Other times, the air would be wet, sticky, smelling like the mud and rain from Hollow Creek. I don't drive that road anymore. I take the long way, headlights cutting through fog, trying not to look in the mirrors. Last week, it got worse. I was responding to a call, minor, a domestic argument that probably didn't need me at all. The street was empty, rain hammering down, wipers screaming against the glass. And I glanced in the rear view. It was leaning forward this time, closer, the badge on its chest glinting under the streetlights, wet from rain. I froze. The voice came again, mine, coming from the figure. Unit 4 end of watch. I slammed on the brakes. The lights went out. For a second, I thought I'd hit something. Then the windshield was clear again. No one, nothing, but I could still feel it. The weight of it, heavy, pressing down like someone had been riding there all along. And then the lights flickered in the mirrors, red, flashing, pulse matching my own heart. I drove the rest of the way to the station with my head down, hands tight, every nerve screaming. They noticed. Dale came up to me the next morning. He didn't ask. He just looked at me. And I knew he'd seen it too, or at least he knew enough to recognize the signs. He said quietly, "It's not the car. It's not Hollow Creek. It's you." I didn't ask him to explain. I didn't want to. I knew anyway. The thing in the back seat wasn't just following me. It was claiming me. Last night, I tried something different. I pulled over to the edge of the highway, engine running, rain drumming hard. I turned the rear view mirror completely downward, away from my eyes, and I waited to see if it would appear. Hours passed. Nothing. I started to think I'd finally escaped. Then, a flash in my peripheral. Red, a shoulder, a sleeve with my badge number, and my own voice coming from nowhere. Unit 4 end of watch. I don't know how I kept driving after that. I don't know how I made it home without swerving into the ditch. But I did, and I parked the cruiser in the garage, breathing hard, hands shaking. The figure never left. Even now, when the lights are off and the house is quiet, I feel it in the back seat, waiting, watching. Sometimes I hear static. Sometimes my own voice calling me, and I know the moment I close my eyes at night, the red lights will come back, flashing, relentless, and that shape, wearing my uniform, staring at me through the glass. I try not to drive alone anymore, but the calls still come, the shifts still demand it, and I know I'm never really alone in that cruiser. Never. Not as long as it follows. I didn't want to look at the old files. I didn't want to remember. But something about that night, about Unit 9, Hollow Creek, the shape in the back seat, it kept pulling me back. I told myself it was research, professional curiosity. That's what I kept repeating. As I slid the heavy drawer open in the records room, the smell hit me first. Musty paper, old coffee, faint rust from the filing cabinets. It made my stomach turn. I pulled out the folder marked Hollow Creek, closed cases, and flipped it open. The first few pages were normal, minor incidents. Lost hikers, vandalism, reports of trespassing. Nothing extraordinary. Then I hit the officer log. That's when it got wrong. I skimmed through names. Most were familiar. Deputies I'd trained with, ones I saw on the roster. Dates of death, circumstances, vehicle accident, on duty, notes on investigations that had gone nowhere. Then I saw it. My own name, Sam Holt. The badge number, number 1472. The date listed was last night, exactly 24 hours ago. I felt the paper shake in my hands. It had to be a mistake. Typo, misprint. I checked the other pages. Same case number, same shift, same assignment, all marked deceased Unit 4. I could feel the blood drain from my face. The room grew warmer, air thick. I looked around. Nobody else in the records room. Just me and the filing cabinets. I flipped through the rest of the case. The report started like any other. Deputy Holt assigned to Unit 4. Backup cruiser. Routine patrol scheduled. Then the narrative shifted. They described a car, empty, headlights still on. Rain, fog, Hollow Creek. I could hear the words in my own voice as I read them. The writer had known details I had never reported, things only I had seen. They described the back seat. Observation. Rear view indicates presence of figure wearing same uniform as officer. Red lights flickering. I froze, my hands gripping the folder, so hard my knuckles whitened. It kept going. Details of the badge, the mud, the smell of wet earth, everything I had tried not to remember. I wanted to throw the folder across the room. I wanted to tear it up, burn it, make it disappear. But I couldn't. I had to know who wrote it. At the bottom of the report, filed by dispatch. Timestamp, 3:47 a.m. I recognized that timestamp immediately. The last radio call. The final call that everyone said never existed. It had been logged, recorded, filed, and somehow it had included me. Dead. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling, trying to force sense into what I was seeing. I thought about the cruiser, the back seat, the flashes of red light, the voice, Unit 4 and the watch. It wasn't just a warning anymore. It was already in the record. A fact, something permanent. I could feel it crawling into me, seeping under my skin. The knowledge that somewhere, in some place I couldn't touch, I was already counted among the dead. I went through the rest of the folder, page by page. There were diagrams, sketches of the road, measurements of tire marks that didn't exist, notes on unidentified movement in backseat, repeated dozens of times. Some of the entries had timestamps from before I even started my shift. How could that be? The folder trembled in my hands. Or maybe I trembled. I didn't want to close it. I couldn't, and I couldn't read it any faster. Each line seemed to pulse under my eyes, like the words themselves were alive. At the very end, there was a small note typed in all caps, underlined. Unit 4 claimed. End of watch confirmed. Dispatch record closed. I sat there, chest tight, staring at the words. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't a report. It was a decree. I could feel it. The moment I left that room, it would follow me back to the cruiser, back to the roads, back to Hollow Creek. I put the folder down, tried to stand, tried to breathe, but the records room felt different now. Closer, smaller, the walls pressing in like they knew. And then I heard it, soft, distant at first, the static hum of the radio. I hadn't touched my cruiser. It wasn't even on, but the sound filled the room. Clicked, hiss, then a whisper, carried through the static. Unit 4 respond. I felt my stomach drop. My knees almost gave out. I wanted to run, wanted to scream, wanted to destroy everything. But I couldn't, because deep down I already knew the truth. I was reading my own obituary, in a file marked active duty. The record existed before I could stop it, before I could fight, and the folder had been waiting for me. For me, I tried to convince myself it was a prank, a bureaucratic error. But every instinct I had told me it wasn't. It was a warning, a claim. The word claimed echoed in my mind, and I could feel in my chest like a weight pressing down. I imagined the cruiser outside, the red lights, the shape in the backseat, the badge glinting in the rain. Unit 4, end watch. It wasn't coming. It was already here. I tried to leave the records room. My legs moved slowly, like through water. The door seemed farther away than it should have. And then I saw it, a shadow, nothing solid, just a movement of darkness at the edge of my vision. It wasn't a person, not fully, but it carried the shape of someone in uniform. I froze, and then the whisper again, end to watch, Sam Holt. It came from everywhere. The walls, the floor, the folder still open on the desk. I stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The shadow didn't move closer. It didn't need to. I was already trapped. I ran, or at least I tried, through the hallways of the station, past empty offices. The smell of old paper and damp was clinging to everything. The shadow stayed just behind me. The whispers followed. Unit 4 respond. Claimed end watch. I reached the exit. The night air hit me. Cold, heavy with rain. The streets empty, silent. I thought maybe I had escaped. But then I caught movement in the reflection of the window. Red lights. A shape wearing my old uniform. Sitting upright. Staring at me from inside the cruiser parked outside. The engine wasn't on. The lights weren't on. It didn't need to be. I knew the moment I stepped toward it. The folder in my hands. The record in the station. I was already counted. Already listed. Already claimed. I don't drive that road anymore. I don't go near Hollow Creek. I don't even touch the cruiser, if I can help it. But every now and then, every time a rain comes down hard enough, or the fog curls thick around the trees, I see it, in the reflection, in the mirrors, the shape in my old uniform, the red lights flashing, and the words echoing in my mind on every static hum. Unit 4 end to watch. I try to tell myself it's not real, but the record exists. My name is there, and somewhere, in some place I can't reach. It's already done. Claimed. I've been a patrolman for 17 years. You'd think by now I'd be numb to the things I see. The wrecks, the calls in the middle of the night, the sound of someone crying in the back seat while you wait for the coroner. But there are some calls that stick to you. They don't just fade. They linger. There's this old bridge just outside of town, the Hollow Creek Bridge. Or at least, that's what it used to be called. It was shut down 10 years ago after a semi crashed through the guardrail. The whole structure was declared unsafe. No one's supposed to go near it anymore. They put up barricades, warning signs, even concrete blocks. But lately, we've been getting calls about jumpers. The first time it happened, it was around 2 in the morning. Dispatch said there was a woman standing on the edge. I remember the static on my radio when I answered. Like the signal didn't want to come through. When I got there, the fog was thick. You couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. The bridge loomed in front of me like a black skeleton. The beams twisted and rusted. My flashlight barely cut through the mist. County 47 on scene, I said into the radio. No visual yet. There was no response. Just static. I started walking up the path. Every step echoed. And then I saw her, a woman, standing at the center of the bridge, right where the asphalt started to crumble. Her back was to me. Her dress was pale, like it used to be white but had been soaked and dried 100 times. Ma'am, I called out, step away from the edge. She didn't move. I kept walking closer. The boards creaked under my boots. She was humming something, soft and shaky, like a lullaby. It took me a second to realize it wasn't English. Ma'am, I said again, please turn around. When she finally did, I froze. Her face was wrong. It wasn't bloody or gory or anything. Just off. Her eyes were wide but not focused, like she was looking at something miles behind me. And then she smiled. It wasn't warm. It was hollow, "Do you hear them?" she asked. My voice cracked. "Hear who?" Before I could take another step, she lifted her foot and stepped off the ledge. I ran. I reached the railing and looked down, but there was nothing. No splash, no body, just black water swallowing the fog. I radioed it in, but dispatch didn't respond. I stayed there for almost an hour, scanning the river with my light. Nothing. The next morning, I filed a report. No body was ever found. The river was too deep and the current too strong. They called it another false alarm. I tried to believe that, but then the calls kept coming. Same location, same description, a woman on the bridge. Sometimes it was reported by drivers passing by on the new bypass road, sometimes by hikers. Always a woman in white. After the fourth call, I started volunteering for the shifts near that sector. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't losing it. 2 weeks later, it happened again. It was raining this time, a slow, steady drizzle that made everything smell like rust and pine. When I pulled up, the barricade was still in place, but one of the chains was broken. Someone had forced their way through. The moment I stepped onto the bridge, my radio cut out. Not static this time, just dead air. No signal, no hiss, nothing. My boots splashed in puddles as I walked. I kept calling out, but the only reply was my own voice bouncing back through the fog. I saw her again. Same spot, same dress, same stillness. I shouted, "Police, don't move." She didn't turn around. But this time, there was something else. A faint sound whispering. I swear I heard more than one voice. I took another step, and another. Then she spoke. Her voice cracked, soft, like she'd been crying for a long time. "It hurts." My chest tightened. "What hurts?" She turned, and this time her eyes weren't empty. They were filled with something like terror or grief. She reached out her hand toward me. Her fingers were trembling, and then the bridge groaned. A deep, low moan that came from the steel itself. It was like the whole thing was breathing. She whispered. They never stopped calling. Then she was gone, just like that. No movement, no fall, just gone. The space she'd been standing in was empty, the rain falling through it. I stood there for a long time, trying to understand what I'd just seen. When I finally went back to my cruiser, my radio came alive again. County 47, report of a jumper on Hollow Creek Bridge. I stared at the radio. The timestamp said it was the same time I'd arrived. Exactly. I didn't file a report that time. Didn't mention her. Didn't mention the voice. But I started looking into the bridge's history. Turns out, before they shut it down, Hollow Creek Bridge had one of the highest suicide rates in the state. Most of them were never recovered. Bodies lost the current. A few people claimed they saw faces in the water at night. The city called it superstition. I wanted to believe that too. But then came the third night. It was cold. That kind of cold that seeps into your bones. I hadn't been sleeping much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that woman's face. That half smile, like she knew something I didn't. I drove out there without a call, just to see it again. I told myself it was for closure. The fog was thicker than usual. It hung low, crawling across the ground. When I reached the barricades, the chain was fixed this time, but the padlock was open. Someone had been there. I stepped over, flashlight cutting through the dark. The air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Halfway across, I heard footsteps. Behind me, slow, wet footsteps. I turned the light around. Nothing. The sound stopped. When I turned back, she was standing in front of me, so close I could see the water dripping from her hair. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. I could see her throat straining, like she was trying to speak, but couldn't. Then, finally I heard it, a whisper right against my ear. Answer the call. I stumbled back, shining the light in her face, but she wasn't there anymore. The beam hit the wet metal and vanished into fog. The bridge groaned again, louder this time, and I swear I saw shapes in the mist, faint, human shapes, like shadows moving underwater. My radio crackled. Static. Then a voice, faint, familiar. County 47, jumper on Hollow Creek Bridge. It was my own voice. Every hair on my body stood up. I dropped the radio. It landed with a metallic clang and rolled to the edge. I turned and ran. Didn't look back. When I got to my car, my reflection in the window looked strange. My uniform was soaked, but not from rain. It was dripping like I just climbed out of the river. I drove home shaking. Didn't sleep that night. Didn't tell anyone. That was 6 months ago. I transferred shortly after. Told them I needed a change of pace. But every so often, my radio still picks up the same call. Always at 2:07 a.m. Always the same voice. County 47, report of a jumper on Hollow Creek Bridge. And no matter where I am, no matter how far, the radio goes dead right after. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the cruiser, I still hear her humming. That same lullaby, soft and broken. And sometimes, I think I hear more voices joining in. Like the bridge never really closed. Like it's still waiting. Still calling. And one day, when I finally answer, I don't think I'll come back. I told myself I'd moved on. New district, new shift, different faces. But that bridge, it never really left me. I stopped talking about it after the transfer. The guys at the new station already thought I was jumpy enough. They blamed it on burnout. Said everyone hits a wall sooner or later. But they didn't hear what I heard. They didn't feel that static bleed through the radio like a pulse. I kept it to myself. I tried to bury it. But about a month ago, I started getting calls again. Always the same voice. Always the same words. County 47, report of a jumper on Hollow Creek Bridge. At first, I thought it was interference. Some weird loop stuck in the system. But always came at the exact same time. 2:07 a.m. Every single time. I'd shut the radio off. And still, I'd hear it. Not from the speaker, but from somewhere behind me. Like it was echoing inside the car. Inside my head. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing there again, that woman in white. Her dress dripping, her eyes glassy and wide. But lately, she wasn't alone. Sometimes I'd dream of silhouettes standing along the bridge rail, motionless, like shadows waiting for something. And every time one of them looked like me, I tried to ignore it. But it's funny how things find a way back to you. Last week, I was cleaning out my locker at the old precinct. They were remodeling and they needed the space. At the bottom of the locker, under an old flashlight and a half-broken radio, I found the original report, the one from that first night on Hollow Creek. Except it wasn't my handwriting. My signature was there, but the words, they were off. Shorter, sharper, like someone had rewritten my thoughts. At the bottom of the page, there was an extra line I'd never written. Witness confirmed jumper was male. Male, that's not what happened. I remember her face, her voice, the way she said, "Do you hear them?" But the report said male. And below that, in faded pencil, there was a name. Mine, repeated 3 times. I didn't sleep that night either. By the end of the week, I knew what I had to do. I told myself it was just to make peace with it. To prove it was all in my head. So, tonight, I went back. It's colder than I remember. The air feels heavier, like the fog's been waiting. The new road runs beside the old one now, but the path to the bridge is still there, overgrown and cracked. It's strange how quiet it gets when you leave the main road. No crickets, no wind, just the sound of my boots on the pavement. When I reached the barricade, I noticed the chain again, broken, like it had never been fixed. I stepped over. The concrete was slick with moss, the air tasting like metal and rain. My flashlight caught the faded words on the old sign. Bridge closed. Danger collapse. But the structure didn't look like it was collapsing. It looked alive. The metal beams glistened with moisture, the surface trembling faintly like it was breathing beneath me. Halfway across, I stopped. The silence wasn't empty. It was listening. I called out, "Hello?" just to break it. My voice came back a second later, a little delayed. Echoed. Twisted. "Hello." It sounded like me, but older, tired. I froze. Then I saw a movement ahead. Someone was standing at the far end of the bridge, still facing the railing. For a moment, I thought it was her again, the woman in white. But as I walked closer, I realized it wasn't her. It was me. The same jacket, same hat. Even the way I leaned slightly to my left, like my bad knee still bothered me. I stopped walking. The light trembled in my hand. The figure didn't move. Then, slowly, it lifted an arm and waved. A small, gentle wave, like a goodbye. My chest went cold. My breath fogged out in front of me. I whispered, "Were you?" No answer. Just that same, slow wave. I tried stepping closer, but my foot caught on something. When I looked down, the ground was wet, not from rain, from water seeping up through the cracks. And in that water, I saw faces, not reflections. Faces, pale and shifting beneath the surface, mouths moving soundlessly, like they were whispering from underneath the bridge. I stumbled back, my flashlight flickering. The figure at the railing tilted its head, still watching me. Then, in the distance, I heard a familiar sound, a faint burst of static. My old radio. I didn't bring it with me, but I heard it, clear as day. County 47, report of a jumper on Hollow Creek Bridge. The figure didn't move. It just smiled. I wanted to run, but something held me there. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. Because now, up close, I could see its face. It wasn't just my shape. It was me. Same eyes, same scars, same tired look I see in the mirror every morning. He leaned on the railing and looked down into the black water. Then he turned back to me, and I swear I heard my own voice whisper, "It's your turn." The radio hissed again, louder this time. So loud it felt like it was inside my skull. County 47, jumper confirmed. Mayo, copy. The echo repeated it, overlapping until it sounded like 100 voices all saying the same thing. Mayo, mayo, mayo. My knees buckled. I gripped the railing to steady myself. The metal was slick and freezing. When I looked down, the water wasn't dark anymore. It was glowing faintly, like light moving beneath the surface. And in that light, I saw figures. Dozens of them, all standing beneath the bridge. Looking up, some wore uniforms. Some didn't, but all of them had the same empty eyes. Then, the reflection of the man in front of me, my reflection, began to ripple. The wave of his hand slowed, turned into something like a reach. He was motioning for me to come closer. I whispered, "I'm not supposed to be here." He smiled, a small, knowing smile. Then he leaned forward, placing one hand on the railing, and whispered something I couldn't hear. But I didn't need to, because somehow I already knew what he was saying. Answer the call. My flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled toward him. It stopped at his boots. My boots. And for a second, the beam cut across the water below. And in that light, I saw something floating. A badge, half buried in the mud. The numbers were scratched out, but the nameplate was still clear enough to read. Mine. When I looked up, the bridge was empty. No figure, no reflection, just the sound of water moving below. I turned to leave, but my radio, the one I didn't have, crackled again. County 47, jumper confirmed. And this time, I heard my own voice answer back. Copy that. I don't remember walking off the bridge. I just remember waking up in my car, parked by the barricades. The engine was off. The clock read 2:07 a.m. My hands were wet, not just damp, soaked, and on the passenger seat was my old radio, the one I'd turned in months ago. It was on, the red light glowing faintly. I picked it up. The speaker hissed, then went silent. Then a single whisper came through. Goodbye. That's all it said, just that one word. I sat there for a long time, watching the fog crawl across the windshield. When I finally looked in the rear-view mirror, I saw something that made my stomach twist. In the reflection, the bridge was still there, lit faintly by my taillights. And standing at the railing, just visible through the haze, was someone waving. Not toward me, toward the bridge. It was me, my silhouette clear as day, leaning over the edge and waving goodbye. I blinked and it was gone. But even now, when I close my eyes, I can still see that shape, still waving, still waiting. And sometimes, Late at night, when the radio clicks on by itself, I swear I hear it whisper again. County 47, then static, then silence. I don't know how long I have before it calls again, but when it does, I think I'll answer. They say most of the 911 calls we get at night are prank calls. Kids, drunks, sometimes just static. But I've learned something after 15 years in dispatch. The ones that sound like static are the ones that stay with you. It was a little after midnight when it came through. I remember because I was halfway through my third cup of bad coffee, staring at the same crack in the ceiling I've been staring at all week. Then the line lit up. The screen said, "Emergency call, Rest Stop 47." That stopped me. Rest Stop 47 had been shut down for over a decade. They tore out the vending machines, boarded up the bathrooms, and disconnected every phone line years ago. There shouldn't have been a call from there. At first, I thought it was a glitch. But then I heard it. A voice. Small. Breathing. I straightened up, headset pressing into my ear. 911, what's your emergency? The line hissed. For a few seconds, there was only wind. Then, faintly, a woman's voice came through. Help. Just one word. Barely there. Ma'am, can you tell me where you are? I asked. You're calling from Rest Stop 47? There was a long pause. Then, yes, please. I don't want to be here anymore. Her voice cracked on the last word. It didn't sound like fear exactly. More like exhaustion. Like she'd been there too long. Okay, I said softly. Can you tell me what happened? Are you hurt? The line crackled again. For a moment, I thought I heard another voice underneath hers. Lower, distant. But it was gone as soon as I noticed it. No, she whispered. I just can't get out. I frowned. You mean your car is stuck? No, she said again. I'm stuck. Then silence. Ma'am. Nothing. The line went dead. I stared at the screen. Rest Stop 47. Call duration 1 minute 42 seconds. I tried calling the number back, but it just rang and rang and rang. Then I remembered there was still an old emergency call box on the property, rusting by the highway, probably forgotten when they shut the place down. But if that's where the call came from, I grabbed the secondary line and radioed the nearest patrol. Unit 24, this is dispatch. Can you do a quick drive-by at Rest Stop 47? Possible distress call. Static for a few seconds. Then a tired voice replied, Copy that. Dispatch. Heading over now. That was Officer Dan Miller. Good guy. Quiet. Reliable. He didn't question it. Just did his job. I stayed on the channel. Waiting. Minutes passed. I could hear his engine in the background. The crunch of gravel under the tires. Dispatch! I'm pulling up now, he said. Looks deserted. I leaned forward. Checked the call box by the E slot. That's where the signal came from. 10 to 4. More static. Then a low hum, like wind or maybe feedback. Then Dan's voice again, sharper this time. Dispatch! You sure about that call? Yeah, I said. Why? Another pause. Because there's no phone here. Just the post where it used to be. Wires are cut clean. I felt my throat tighten. You're saying the phone's gone? Completely. Looks like it's been gone for years. The line popped like the mic brushed against his jacket. Then his voice came back, lower, careful. Wait, hold on. I could hear his boots scuffing against pavement. Then he whispered, There's something written on the post. What is it? A pause. Then it says call answered. A chill crept up my neck. I checked the timestamp again. The call had come in exactly at 12:03 a.m. It was now 12:16. I tried to stay calm. Dan, check the rest stop. Maybe someone's inside one of the buildings. Maybe she used a cell phone. He didn't respond right away. Then, copy that. The sound of his footsteps echoed faintly through the receiver, each one slower than the last. Then came the wind again, only it didn't sound like wind this time. It was rhythmic, like breathing. Dan, I said. He exhaled into the mic. Yeah, I'm here. What do you see? The lights are all broken. Place smells like mildew. Floors are wet. Wet. Yeah, he said quietly. like rainwater, but it hasn't rained all week. I could hear him moving deeper inside. Then his voice got smaller. Dispatch, there's a phone here. My pulse jumped. What do you mean? I thought you said it was gone. This one's inside, he said. Looks old, like the kind they bolted to the wall. Receiver's hanging off the hook. The line crackled again. Then, very faintly, I heard something else on his end. A whisper. Soft, drawn out. Almost singing. Dan muttered, "What the hell is that?" "Dan, get out of there," I said. "Now." But he didn't answer. Just breathing. Then the sound of phone being lifted. He spoke again, barely above a whisper. "There's someone on the line." "Who?" I asked. "Me." The next sound I heard was the dial tone. The channel went dead. I tried to raise him again, over and over, but there was nothing. By 12:30, another unit had been dispatched to check on him. They found his cruiser parked by the barricade. Engine still running, driver's door open. No sign of Dan. No footprints leading away. Just wet pavement that smelled faintly like old rain. I had to write the report myself. Officer failed to respond to repeated radio contact. Area search. No evidence of struggle. Possible equipment malfunction. That was the official story. But I kept replaying his last words. "There's someone on the line, me." I didn't understand it then. Not until a few nights later. It was late again. Same shift. Same coffee. The call board were quiet. Then, just before midnight, I heard the faintest click in my headset. Not a ring. Just the soft click of a receiver being lifted. No number appeared on the screen. No call Idaho. Just a dead line. I hesitated, then said quietly, 911, what's your emergency? At first, there was only static. Then a voice I hadn't heard in days. Dispatch. My heart nearly stopped. Dan. The static deepened. Then his voice came through again, broken and distant. Don't answer the call. Dan, where are you? Please, he whispered. Don't let them answer. The line went dead again. When I looked at the screen, the call log still said, Rest Stop 47. Same time, 12:03 a.m. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, the call keeps repeating. Every night, the same number, the same timestamp. I stopped picking up after the second one. But last night, I noticed something different. When the phone rang, I saw my reflection in the glass of the console, but it wasn't sitting where I was. It was standing behind me, smiling, and in its hand, it was holding a phone receiver. I haven't gone back to work since. I can still hear the faint tone ringing in my head when I try to sleep, and every time it stops, I think I hear a voice whisper, "Call answered." I know I should report it. I know I should tell someone. But deep down, I already know what they'll find if they check that call box again. They'll find my name written next. I never wanted to go back. Not really. But some things have a way of pulling you in, whether you like it or not. After that night at Rest Stop 47, I thought keeping the footage from the security cameras would help. Maybe I could convince myself it was all a prank, some kind of elaborate setup. Maybe seeing it would make sense of the calls. Maybe I could finally sleep again. I was wrong. The tape was old, grainy. One of those bulky VHS recordings from the Rest Stop's original surveillance system. They'd forgotten to discard it when the place closed. Somehow, it had survived, stacked on a shelf in the precinct's evidence room. I convinced my lieutenant to let me review it, just for clarity, just for closure. I pushed the tape into the player, and the first few minutes were mundane. Empty parking lot, broken light flickering above the east side, wind rustling through the cracked asphalt. No people, no cars, just the sound of static hum and the occasional creak of a loose sign swinging in the breeze. Then I saw him. At first, I thought it was a shadow, a trick of the grainy footage. But he emerged from the fog like someone stepping out of a dream. He was pacing back and forth near the old call box, which now looked more like a rusted sculpture than a functioning phone. The first thing that hit me was his build. Same broad shoulders, same slight stoop from bad posture, same stiff walk when he changed direction. And the uniform, my uniform, no mistakes, even down to the creases. I had never bothered to iron properly. I leaned closer to the screen. He moved like me, talked like me, though no sound came from the tape. The grain blurred his face, but I could see enough. The shape of his head, the way he ran a hand over his hair when he paused, the way he shook his head, almost frustrated. It was me, but it couldn't be me. I'd been in my apartment that night, alone, drinking bad coffee, trying to convince myself I wasn't imagining things. I watched the tape again, paused it, frame by frame. Every movement was identical to how I move now, even the slight twist of my right ankle when he stopped pacing. I swallowed hard. I rewound the tape, watched the first part again, and that's when I noticed something else. The call box. It flickered faintly, almost imperceptibly, like it had a pulse. When he walked near it, the light brightened, and each time he moved away, it dimmed. I froze on the screen. The last time I'd been at that place, there had been no phone. The post was empty. And yet, on the tape, there was receiver hanging loose, wires dangling, working. Somehow, I leaned back, trying to steady my breathing. I told myself it was a trick of old film, maybe a double exposure, a reflection, something technical. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The pacing continued, back and forth, until he stopped, and he looked directly at the camera. I felt the blood drain from my face, because he wasn't just looking at the camera. He was looking at me. The faint grain of the tape couldn't hide it. The eyes, mine. Same tired lines beneath them. Same shape. And in that gaze, there was understanding, recognition, something waiting. I wanted to shut it off, smash the screen, burn the tape, but I couldn't. And then the sound started, not from the speakers, from the room. Low, humming static at first, then whispers, faint, drawn out. It didn't matter that the tape was silent. It didn't matter that the room was empty. The sound was coming from somewhere else, somewhere deeper. The figure, me, moved again, took a step toward the call box, then lifted the receiver. And that's when it happened. The whispering became words. My voice, clear, broken. Dispatch, help me. I slammed my hand on the stop button. The image froze on him, standing there, head tilted slightly. The tape, still in the player, clicked as if locked in place. I didn't want to watch anymore. I wanted it gone, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I rewound the tape again against every rational thought. I had to see what happened next. That's when I noticed the date stamp. The tape was from yesterday. Yesterday. And I hadn't been at that rest stop yesterday. I hadn't even been near that highway. I tried to tell myself it was a recording from years ago, but the time stamp was precise, exact to the minute, the pacing, the movements, all aligned perfectly with the current day's hour. I shook my head, trying to ground myself. Maybe it was a prank. Someone set up as a joke. But who would have access? Who would know my build, my walk, my uniform? I stopped myself before thinking too far. I didn't want to admit it, not out loud, because if I said it, I would have to face it. The tape kept looping, and each time, the figure at the call box grew more defined, more alive. Then suddenly the tape went blank, just black. No static, no image, no sound. I leaned closer, pressing buttons, trying to see if it was mechanical error, and that's when I noticed it. The tape had changed. It wasn't the tape that had gone blank. It was the room. The camera had moved. The view had shifted to behind the figure. And there, in the darkness, was me, standing behind him. I could see the uniform, the stance, the way the shoulders slouched slightly, the same tired eyes. I gasped. I hadn't moved. I wasn't in the footage. And yet, there I was. The figure at the phone, my double, turned slowly, head cocking to one side. It smiled, a small, almost imperceptible smile, and then waved, like it knew I was watching, like it had been waiting for me to see. I stumbled back from the monitor. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear in my ears. I reached for the tape to eject it, and it was gone, just vanished, from the player, from the shelf. No evidence of it ever existing. I checked the case log. Nothing. Not a single entry about that tape. Not the date. Not the time. Nothing. I tried to call the evidence room. Hello. I said, "This is Officer. I need to check." The line was dead. No dial tone. Nothing. I sat back, staring at the blank monitor. The room was silent. Empty, but I could still hear it. The pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. I shook my head. I told myself it was in my mind. Stress. Fatigue. The fog of too many late nights. But then a shadow moved across the wall behind me. Slow. Intentional. And I froze. It wasn't mine. Not exactly. It was taller, slightly broader. But it moved like me. And then I heard it. The whisper. My turn. I spun around. Nothing. Just the empty room. I tried to leave. I tried to ignore it. But the feeling followed me. Like the figure on that tape wasn't just a reflection. It was a warning. A message. And deep down, I knew one thing for certain. If it could be on tape, if it could appear in that footage while I was elsewhere, then it could be anywhere, watching, waiting. I haven't gone back to that evidence room since. I don't plan to, but sometimes late at night, I think about that figure, standing by the call box, waving, patient, silent, knowing, and I can't shake the feeling that one day, it won't be on tape anymore. It will be in front of me. I shouldn't have gone in. I knew that the moment my boots hit the precinct floor, the fluorescent lights were harsh and buzzing, the coffee machine rattling as if it were trying to warn me. But habit is stronger than sense, and I told myself I had to do my job. Someone had to be there, answering calls, taking the reports, keeping the line open. The night was quiet at first. Too quiet. I sat in my chair, headset in place, and stared at the call board. Nothing. No reports, no flashes, no static. It should have been a relief, but it wasn't. The silence was heavy, pressing down on me, waiting. Then, exactly at 12:03 a.m., it happened. The line lit up. I froze. I didn't want to answer. I knew what it would be. I knew the number by heart, even though it shouldn't exist anymore. Rest stop 47. A small part of me hoped it was just interference, a prank, someone pressing buttons and laughing at me. But that hope was weak, almost pathetic, because I already knew it wasn't a joke. I picked up the headset, my hands trembling despite trying to steady them. 911, what's your emergency? I said, trying to keep my voice normal. The line was dead for a moment. Static hissed softly, like wind through a cracked window. Then the voice came through. Officer, Mark. My stomach dropped. Not just the voice, not just the call, but my name. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't someone reading a report. It was personal. Who is this? I asked, my throat tight. Silence. Then a quiet, trembling exhale. You know me. I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the desk. The room felt colder suddenly, like a draft had swept in from nowhere. I wanted to hang up, to tell myself it was a hallucination, to pretend that all this didn't exist. But I couldn't. Something held me there. Something in the sound of the voice, soft and broken, and yet full of intent. I need you, it said. I leaned back, closing my eyes for a brief second, trying to ground myself in reality. You're just tired. Stress. Too many late nights. You've been staring at screens all day. But when I opened my eyes, the call had changed. The static had shifted, almost melodic, like someone breathing through a long tunnel. And beneath it, faintly, I could hear another voice. Low, distorted, echoing. It said my name again. Mark. I pressed my hand to my temple. I could feel my pulse in my ears. I wanted to slam the headset down, run, pretend this wasn't happening. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I asked quietly, almost to myself, "Where are you?" The answer came immediately. Here. No background noise. No description. Just that word. I froze, because it sounded like it was coming from inside the room. My eyes darted around. The precinct was empty. Lights hummed. Computers blinked. The AC rattled faintly. Nothing unusual. And yet the voice had weight. Presence. I whispered, "Who is this?" A pause. Then a faint chuckle. Low. Soft. Personal. "I'm you." I laughed nervously. Not out loud. Not really. Just the shaky exhale of someone who doesn't want to admit they're losing control. I don't understand, I said. You will, it said. The line went silent again. I stared at the headset. The red light blinked once, then paused. Then, unexpectedly, the line crackled back. This time, the voice was closer, clearer. My turn is next, Mark. I felt it like a weight pressing against my chest. My hands shook. My knees felt weak. I tried to tell myself this was a call, nothing more, that the voice belonged to someone out there, somewhere. But I knew, deep down, it wasn't anyone. It was me, or what wanted to be me. I stood, pacing the small office, trying to shake the creeping dread. I felt the walls closing in, the hum of fluorescent lights, the whir of computers, the distant clang of a door. Everything sounded amplified, like the building itself was holding its breath. And then I heard it, a faint tapping, from the other side of the room. Light, deliberate, slow. I turned. Nothing. I walked closer. The tapping stopped. I could feel the sweat on my back. I could feel the hair on my arms standing on end. Something in the air had changed. Something was watching. I swallowed and returned to the headset. The line was quiet now. For a moment, I almost hung up, almost pretended none of this was real. Then the voice came again. I've been waiting for you. I gasped, not just because of the words, but because of the familiarity, the cadence, the tone. It wasn't just a voice. It was mine, echoing from somewhere else. I sank into the chair, head in my hands. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a prankster with access to old recordings. Maybe interference from someone who knew my schedule. Maybe I was finally losing my mind. But then, a sound I knew too well made me freeze. Footsteps, soft, slow, from the hallway behind me. They weren't approaching, not exactly, but they were moving in time with my own heartbeat. I didn't turn. I couldn't. I just sat, paralyzed, listening. Then the line spoke again. Do you see me, Mark? I shook my head. Where? I don't see anyone. I'm always here. A shadow passed behind me, barely visible. A flicker in the corner of my eye. Something in uniform. Something broad-shouldered, tall. And it moved just like I do. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I couldn't. Instead, I whispered, Why? Why are you doing this? The voice sighed, slow and deliberate. I told you it's my turn. It's always been my turn. I shook my head, trying to reject the words, reject the thought. But deep down, I knew it was true. Every call, every restless night, every flicker of static, all of it had led here. The room went still. Even the hum of the lights stopped. And for a long, unbearable moment, there was only silence. Then, just before I thought I might have imagined everything, the line spoke again. Mark answered the call. I gripped the headset tighter, knuckles white. Something inside me recoiled. Something screamed at me to hang up, to leave, to run. But a part of me, the part that stared at rest stop 47, that had watched the tape, that had felt the presence behind me, knew I wouldn't. Because the call wasn't just a phone line. It was a tether, and it was pulling me in. I tried to stand, to leave the office, but my legs wouldn't obey. My body felt heavy, weighted by 1,000 unspoken truths. The voice whispered again, softer this time, almost intimate. I'm here, Mark, and I've been waiting. I could feel it now, not just in my ears, not just in the line, inside me, under my skin, in the space where my reflection used to be alone. I knew what I had to do. I took a deep breath, swallowed the fear, and said quietly, almost resignedly, I hear you. The line went dead. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, faintly, tapping, not from the walls, not from the floor, but from inside me. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat. I just sat in that chair, staring at the call board, waiting, and at 12:03 a.m., exactly as I had the night before, the line lit up, and I knew it was starting again. I started my shift at 9, just like every other night. The old textile factories at the edge of town, the kind of place where the streetlights barely reached the fences and shadows pooled like water in the corners. I had walked these halls 100 times in my mind before, imagined every sound the old machines could make after hours, and yet tonight felt different. The gate clanged shut behind me, and the echo bounced across the empty yard. I leaned on my flashlight for a moment, feeling the cold metal press against my palm. The wind was lazy, whispering through broken windows, carrying a faint smell of oil and mildew. I switched on the security panel, a blinking rectangle of green and red lights. Nothing unusual yet, but the motion sensors were twitching already, tiny blips in a static rhythm. I frowned. No one should be here. The factory had been closed for years. I started my rounds. The first corridor stretched endlessly, racks of dusty fabric hanging like frozen ghosts. My boots echoed on the cracked concrete floor. Every step sounded too loud, too sharp, and I imagined someone standing just beyond my vision, waiting. The lights overhead flickered, one bulb buzzing like a dying insect. I told myself it was just the wiring. Old buildings did that, but the hair on my arm stayed stubbornly upright. Then the first sensor went off. I froze. The red light blinked on the panel, accompanied by a soft, insistent beep. Nothing moved. I walked slowly toward the signal, flashlight slicing through the darkness. The air smelled different here, thicker somehow, like something had been breathing where it shouldn't. I passed rows of machines, their surfaces coated in dust, gears still in place but silent. Nothing. I checked the corner where the sensor was triggered. Empty. I circled once, twice. My reflection in the dusty glass of the control panel looked back at me, pale and tense. I could feel my own heartbeat in my throat, a drum that seemed far too loud. I whispered to myself, "It's nothing, just the sensors. They're old, they're faulty." But the words sounded weak even to me. I moved to the next section, trying to shake off the unease, trying to remember why I'd agreed to this job. Money, I told myself. It was always about money. But now the thought seemed small and foolish. The corridor seemed longer than it should be. Shadows clung to the corners, stretching and twitching in the corners of my vision. I kept turning my head, but every time, nothing was there, just the dark. Another sensor, another beep. This time, it came from the second floor. My stomach tightened. The stairwell was narrow, and the wooden steps groaned under my weight. I held my flashlight out in front of me, every sense straining. The panel showed a blinking red, and yet the hallway upstairs was empty. I could see the outline of offices through the grimy windows, chairs tipped over, papers scattered, as if someone had left in a hurry. I stepped closer to one of the offices. The door was ajar. I pushed it gently, and the hinge squealed. Inside, the room was dark, but there was something different, a smell, not dust or mildew, something sharper, metallic, like iron. My eyes darted around. The desk was bare. The chair was empty. Yet when I turned, there was a mark on the wall, a handprint in the dust, smeared as if someone had leaned there recently. I swallowed hard. No one's here. I muttered. My voice felt weak, swallowed by the cavernous room. I knew I should call it in, but I didn't. Part of me wanted proof. Part of me needed to see whatever was setting off these sensors. I moved slowly down the corridor, following the trail of red blips on the panel. Each room I passed was empty, yet I felt watched. I could hear it. The soft brush of air, the creak of metal, as if the building itself was breathing around me. My flashlight caught glimpses of shapes that disappeared the instant I focused on them. Shadows stretched along the walls, turning corners before I reached the old textile floor. The machines were massive here, looming over me like silent sentinels. Motion sensors kept going off, first on the left, then the right, then the center. I walked toward each one, shining my light into the corners. There was nothing but dust and silence, and yet my instinct screamed at me that I was not alone. I stopped by one machine, a loom frozen in time, its thread stiff and yellowed. My flashlight flickered for a moment, and in that split second, I thought I saw movement, a figure, pale and thin, standing just beyond the machine. My heart leapt, and when the light steadied, it was gone. I spun around, but the corridor behind me was empty. My breaths came fast now, shallow, and I pressed my back against the cold metal of the machine. The panel beeped again. The red light was now in the far corner of the floor. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to call it a night, to say the sensors were broken and leave. But something kept me moving forward. Compulsion, maybe. Fear. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. I reached the corner. The air was colder here. I could see my breath. Small clouds that vanished instantly. The sensor had gone off again, but the floor was empty. I shone my flashlight around, heart hammering. Then I saw it, a shadow too dark, too solid, in the shape of a person. It moved, slowly, impossibly, across the floor. I blinked, and it was gone. I wanted to run, but my legs refused. I felt the eyes of the factory on me, pressing in, cold and heavy. My flashlight trembled in my hand. The panel beeped once more, and this time I noticed something wrong. The red wasn't moving. It was in the same place. But I hadn't moved closer yet. I stepped forward cautiously. The air thickened like it had weight pressing against my chest. And then I heard it, a soft shuffle, like someone dragging a shoe across the concrete. Behind me, I spun around. Empty, just shadows stretching and twisting. The thought came suddenly. Maybe the building remembers. Maybe the walls keep a record of the people who were here, the ones who left too soon. The thought made my skin crawl. I couldn't explain it. I shouldn't have been thinking it. But the factory was whispering its emptiness alive. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had one more round the perimeter before I could finally report the faulty sensors and leave. I walked toward the exit, every step in negotiation with my own fear. The corridor seemed longer than it should be, the shadows deeper. I kept thinking I saw shapes darting in the corners, but each time it was gone. I reached the main hall. The moonlight spilled in through broken windows, pale and thin. The red dot on the panel blinked one last time, and then stopped. The sensors were silent. My relief was sudden, almost dizzying. Maybe it had been a glitch. Maybe my mind had been playing tricks on me. And then I heard it, a whisper, not loud, not a scream, just a breath of sound, so soft I almost didn't hear it. My name, my real name, spoken from somewhere deep in the darkness. I froze. My legs wouldn't move. My mind screamed at me to run, but the sound held me there, pressing against my chest. I swung my flashlight around, wild, desperate. The hall was empty. Just moonlight, dust, silence. My name came again, just as soft, just as real, closer now. It seemed just beyond the reach of the light. I ran then, down the corridor, over the creaking stairs, past the offices. The sensors didn't beep anymore, but I didn't care. My only thought was to get out. I reached the front gate, yanked it open, and spilled onto the street, the night air biting my skin, making me shiver. I looked back once. The factory sat in its silence, dark and waiting. I wanted to tell myself it was over, that nothing was there, that the sensors were broken. But deep down I knew it was watching, and the thing that had called my name was still inside. I never stayed for the end of my shift again. I didn't need to. The factory had made its point, and somewhere in the endless dark, I felt it laughing softly, waiting for the next time I had the nerve or the foolishness to step inside. The night guard job was simple, really. Watch the empty factory, report any anomalies. But some nights, some places, they watch back, and I had learned the hard way that this factory was not empty. I thought reviewing the footage would be simple. That's what I told myself when I sat down in front of monitors. The factory security room cold and silent, except for the hum of the old computers. I had hoped seeing the empty halls on tape would calm me, prove to me that nothing had been there last night, but I was wrong. I pressed play on the first camera, the one covering the main corridor. Dust floated in the beams of the night vision lights, caught midair like tiny stars frozen in a dark sky. I leaned forward, squinting. The footage was grainy, jittering slightly with the motion of the old camera. And then I saw it myself. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I blinked and rubbed my eyes. I was walking down the corridor, flashlight in hand, just like I had last night. But as I watched closer, my stomach tightened. I didn't remember going down this particular hallway, the one on the far left, past the offices, where the machinery floor met the stairwell. I had never been there. I froze in my chair. My own reflection on the dark screen stared back at me. The figure I saw in the footage moved like me. The same hesitant steps, the same pauses where I'd been listening to shadows. But the route was wrong. Every memory of my rounds screamed that I had never gone there. I hit pause, frame by frame. My pulse thudded in my ears. I could see the faint brush of dust against the floor, the slight sway of hanging cables, the flicker of the overhead lights. My reflection, myself, was there, moving, stepping into corners I had never entered, and then something else moved behind me. I rewound the footage, watching it over and over. The shadow was vague at first, a dark smudge at the edge of the frame. But as I slowed it down frame by frame, it became clearer. A figure, not quite human. Too tall, too thin, the edges flickering like static. My stomach dropped. It followed me, moving in ways that felt wrong. Its limbs bent at angles that shouldn't be possible. It mirrored my own hesitation, lingering in the corners, disappearing when I looked directly at it. I leaned back, rubbing my temples. I thought I was imagining things. Stress. Too many nights alone in the factory. But my eyes betrayed me. The footage didn't lie. I was walking in places I had never walked. And something else was walking with me. I pulled up the footage from the second floor. My figure appeared again, stepping into hallways I had never remembered climbing. Office doors opened that I had never touched. Papers fluttered as though caught by an invisible breeze. And again the shadow followed. Always at the edge, always just out of reach. I felt my hands tremble. I pressed pause, frame by frame, the red recording light reflecting in my wide eyes. My reflection, me, paused at one door, hand on the handle. But I had never opened that door. I never even remembered it being there. My mind struggled against the logic of it. I had walked these halls hundreds of times. I knew them. I knew every corridor, every stairwell. And yet here I was, captured doing things I did not remember doing. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath fogging the glass. Something cold brushed against my neck. Or maybe I imagined it. I forced myself back to the footage. My figure had stopped in front of a small office, the door swinging slowly open as if pushed by a gentle wind. And then I saw it, a flash of movement behind the door, a figure so dark it seemed to swallow the light. It was watching me. I'd backed away from the screen, heart hammering. The thought struck me suddenly. What if the factory wasn't empty last night? What if what I had seen or thought I had seen was real, lingering in places I had never been? I shook my head. No, it had to be a trick of the cameras, or the way the lights flickered. That had to be it. I pulled up the footage from the ground floor again. My figure appeared, stepping across the machinery floor, pausing at corners I had never stopped at. I could see the dust swirling around my boots, the overhead lights swaying ever so slightly. And then I saw it, a figure taller than me, thin, always at the edge of the frame. Its movements were deliberate, patient, almost human in their imitation of me. I pressed pause and zoomed in. The edges of its form were static, flickering like the air itself was broken around it. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. My fingers hovered over the mouse, afraid to scroll forward, afraid to rewind. And then I saw the door, the one I had never opened. The door swung slowly, and in the frame before mine entered, the figure was already inside. I had no memory of this. None. I leaned back, breathing hard, trying to steady my thoughts. Maybe it was some kind of hallucination, some trick my tired brain had played after hours alone. But I knew better. I had felt it, the cold pressing on my chest, the weight in the hallways, the whispers I hadn't recognized. Something had followed me last night. Something had walked these halls with me. I needed proof. I needed to understand. I started reviewing the footage again, frame by frame, but now with a different focus. Not just me, but the edges of the frame, the corners where shadows pooled, where light didn't quite reach. That's when I noticed it. Subtle differences between what I remembered and what the footage showed. Dust disturbed in places I hadn't stepped. Papers shifted on desks I hadn't touched. Chairs tipped over slightly, Marks on the floor that didn't exist yesterday. My chest tightened. I leaned closer, breath shallow. The more I watched, the more I realized I hadn't walked alone. The shadow, whatever it was, had guided me or followed me or mirrored me. I couldn't tell which. It moved in perfect rhythm with my own steps, appearing only where the camera caught me, always just out of reach. I tried to shake it off. Logic, I told myself. Everything had a reason, but the footage didn't allow logic. Frame by frame, my figure entered places I didn't remember, hallways I hadn't explored, rooms I had never opened, and the shadow waited, watching, patient and silent. I sat back, hands gripping the edge of the desk. The room felt colder. The hum of the computers was suddenly loud, oppressive. I glanced at the monitors again. My figure paused in the middle of the corridor, just before the stairwell I hadn't used. And then it turned, looked directly at the camera. Or rather at me. I felt my own body stiffen. The reflection in the screen wasn't mine anymore. Or maybe it was, but it wasn't. I couldn't explain it. Every frame seemed wrong, yet undeniable. And then I noticed it. Something I hadn't seen before. A second figure, tall and thin, standing behind the railing on the second floor, watching me, watching my figure, watching everything. I couldn't breathe. I pressed pause, leaned back, closed my eyes. My mind raced. What was this? What I walked into? I had come to review footage, to reassure myself. But now it was different. Now I felt the factory inside me, pressing in, pulling me into its rhythm, showing me scenes I hadn't lived, yet somehow had. I reopened my eyes. My figure was moving again, slowly, methodically, entering a hallway I had no memory of. The shadow followed, always following. I pressed forward, my hands trembling, scrolling frame by frame. The details were clear. My boots on the dusty floor, the subtle sway of the hanging lights, the dark figure lingering at the edge. Every step measured, deliberate. I could hear it then. A faint whisper, almost drowned out by the hum of the computers. My name, just my name, drawn out, soft, somewhere deep in the footage, or maybe in the room itself. My breath caught in my throat. I knew it wasn't coming from the speakers. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere. I pressed pause again, stared at the frame. My figure, alone in a hallway I had never entered. And behind me, just at the edge, the shadow, waiting, patient. And I realized something I didn't want to admit. Whatever was in that factory last night, it had been with me. It had followed me into places I didn't remember, places I hadn't walked. And maybe it had walked for me. I shut the monitors off. Darkness filled the room, thicker than before. The hum of the computers died, leaving only the silence. I sat there, chest tight, heart hammering. The footage was clear. My own eyes had seen it, and yet I had no memory of the steps I took, the doors I opened, the halls I wandered. I stood up slowly, stretching, trying to convince myself it was just tiredness, just stress. But deep down I knew better. Something had been inside me last night. Something had walked with me. Something had guided me. And I could feel it still, pressing in, waiting. I left the security room, careful not to look back. But the memory of the footage lingered, burned into my mind. Every hallway I hadn't entered. Every shadow that followed. Every step I didn't remember. And I knew, with a sinking certainty, that I would never be alone in the factory again. I was alone at the checkpoint, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes every small sound feel like it's magnified. The night was dry and cold, the kind of cold that creeps into your bones no matter how many layers you wear. I had been sitting there for hours, the hum of the fluorescent lights above flickering just enough to remind me I was awake. I'd been checking plates, questioning, drivers, logging cars, all the usual. Nothing unusual. Nothing until her. I saw the headlights first, low and steady on the empty road. A single car, slow, like it didn't know where it was going. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out, boots crunching against the gravel. As it got closer, I noticed the plates. They were old, faded, peeling at the edges. My stomach sank before I even looked them up. Something about them didn't feel right. I keyed into the police database, my hands trembling slightly, and then it came up. My stomach turned over. The registration matched a missing persons report. A car reported missing 10 years ago. 10 years. I stared at the screen, blinking like it was some kind of trick, some glitch in the system. But it wasn't. The make, model, color, everything lined up. The car in front of me had been gone for a decade. I stepped back, forcing myself to breathe. The car pulled slowly to the stop line. I could see the interior faintly through the dusty windows. Empty. Nothing but the faint smell of old leather and something else. Something I couldn't identify. My mind raced. How could this be? I had seen cars stolen or abandoned before. But 10 years? And the plates. The plates hadn't been on the road in a decade. I knocked on the driver's side window. No answer. I rapped again. The car didn't move. I leaned closer, flashlight sweeping across the interior. Dust covered the dashboard, thick, undisturbed. I expected maybe a skeleton or at least the remnants of someone long gone. But nothing. Empty. The seats were worn, cracked, but no sign of the body, no sign of life. I radioed it in, hands still shaking. This is checkpoint 3. I have a vehicle, expired plates. Matches a missing person report from 10 years ago. My voice sounded strange even to me, too loud in the still night. There was a pause over the radio, static crackling. Copy. Do not approach. Wait for backup. I stepped back from the car, watching it. Something about it felt alive. Not alive like an engine humming, but alive like it was aware of me. I couldn't explain it, but my instinct screamed at me to keep my distance. I circled the checkpoint slowly, flashlight in hand, trying to look normal, trying to act like I wasn't terrified. And then I saw it. The back seat. Something moved. Just a flicker, barely noticeable. My heart jumped. I leaned in closer. Empty. Dust swirled in the beam of my flashlight. Nothing. But the feeling didn't leave me. It was watching, waiting. The hairs on my arms stood on end, prickling. I told myself it was exhaustion. Nerves. I'd been on night shifts long enough to know how the mind plays tricks in the dark. I decided to open the driver's door. Slowly, carefully, gloved hand shaking slightly. The handle was cold, sticky with rust. The door creaked. Inside, the air smelled like decay, old leather and something metallic. I froze. I had expected nothing. But this was wrong. Too wrong. My flashlight swept across the interior. The dashboard was coated in dust, untouched. The glove compartment hung open slightly. And then I saw the rearview mirror. Something was in it, not a reflection of me. Not the car, not anything from the road. A face, pale, shadowed, eyes hollow, staring at me. I blinked. It was gone. I shook my head, trying to dismiss it. My mind was tired. I had been on edge all night. The empty road, the silence, it was playing with me, but the chill in my stomach didn't lie. Something was inside that car. Something had been waiting. I stepped back. The radio crackled again. Backup was on the way. A vehicle 20 minutes out. 20 minutes. Too long. I felt trapped, small, exposed in the cold night air. I circled the car again, flashlight sweeping. Nothing. The tires were cracked. Old. The paint chipped and peeling. Everything about this car screamed that it should be abandoned, forgotten. And yet here it was, sitting at my checkpoint like it had purpose. I noticed the rear hatch, slightly ajar. Not much, just a gap. I approached slowly, chest tight. My flashlight caught the edge of it, the metal dull in the beam. I hesitated. Should I open it? I could call it in. Wait. But something compelled me. Something whispered that I should look, that I should see. I lifted the hatch. Dust billowed out. And inside, nothing. Just the empty space. Old crates. The smell of decay stronger now. I swallowed hard. My mind raced. I had seen missing persons cars before. Usually abandoned, left to rot. But this one, it was different. It felt like it had been waiting for someone to find it. Waiting for me. I stepped back. My breath visible in the cold air. The headlights from the incoming backup car flickered in the distance. Relief should have come, but it didn't. The cart moved. Not physically, not like rolling forward or back, but it shifted. The shadows inside twisted, shapes bending in ways that made no sense. I stepped closer, heart hammering, unable to look away. I noticed scratches inside the car, not deep, not recent, but long, deliberate, across the door panel, the dashboard, the roof lining. Marks like claws, long and slow, deliberate. My stomach churned. Something had been inside, and it hadn't left quietly. I shone my flashlight into the backseat again. Shadows pooled in corners. My reflection on the glass seemed wrong. Too pale, too sharp. And then I saw it just for a moment. A hand, pale, thin, resting on the edge of the seat. My heart leapt. I blinked. Gone. Just the empty car, still silent. The backup lights hit the checkpoint. My relief was immediate but short-lived. I called them over, telling them what I found. Their flashlights swept over the car. One of them frowned. It's empty. No plates, no one inside. Looks like an old stolen vehicle, maybe abandoned. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him what I saw, but the words stuck in my throat. What would I even say? That a car, missing for 10 years, somehow drove itself here, and that inside it watched me? I backed up slowly, keeping my eyes on the car. The officer stepped closer, flashlight in hand. I pointed. The plates, they match a missing person report. 10 years ago. He frowned, took out his radio, called it in. And still, I felt the car shift slightly, as though it knew, as though it understood that it had been discovered. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I was rooted to gravel, watching, heart hammering, every instinct screaming. The car sat there, silent, empty, but heavy, waiting. And I realized then, with a sinking certainty, that whatever had been inside, whatever had driven this car to me, hadn't left. It never left. I tried to focus on the road ahead, on the approaching backup, on anything normal, but my mind kept returning to that rear-view mirror, that fleeting face, the shifting shadows, the scratches that hadn't been there before. I had seen this car in the reports. I had never expected it to exist, and yet here it was, waiting for me. I couldn't explain it. Logic failed me. 10 years, empty, yet somehow here. And I knew, deep down, that the missing person, or whatever had been in the car, was still out there, still moving, still watching. And now, so was I stepped back, letting the other officers handle it. My hands shook as I wrote down the report. My pulse refused to settle, and I kept glancing at the car. Silent, empty, and yet alive in ways I couldn't understand. Something about it, something about the way it had appeared, the way it had waited, told me that this night, this checkpoint, had crossed a line I couldn't return from. And I knew, with a dread that settled like ice in my chest, that I would never forget it. The night was quiet, almost too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes every small sound feel like a warning. I had been sitting at the rural checkpoint for hours, eyes half-lidded, coffee gone cold in my hand. The road stretched out ahead of me like a black ribbon. Nothing moving except the occasional wind stirring the leaves along the shoulder. I kept telling myself it was just another slow shift, just another night of logging plates and waving cars along. I was wrong. The headlights appeared first, low and steady, creeping up the road. A single car, old and beaten down, approaching slowly. I keyed the radio just in case. Checkpoint 3, approaching vehicle. My voice sounded flat in the night, too loud even for me. The car didn't speed up, didn't stop abruptly. It rolled to the line like it had all the time in the world. I walked out, flashlight in hand, boots crunching over the gravel. I noted the plates immediately. Expired, faded, they didn't belong. I typed them in, half expecting nothing to come up, half expecting a routine expired registration. And then it came up, not just expired, missing, stolen, 10 years ago. I froze, heart thudding. The make, the model, the color, it all matched. The car in front of me had been reported missing over a decade ago. The driver's side window rolled down slowly, and I squinted at the figure inside. He looked normal, or as normal as anyone can look under pale moonlight, leaning back in the seat as if nothing unusual had happened. I nodded, tried to keep my voice steady. Evening. License and registration, please. The man smiled faintly. Not friendly, not polite, just a small twitch of his lips. He handed me a card through the window. I took it, instinctively glancing at it. My stomach froze. It was an ID card. Mine. The photo was me, exactly as I looked now, though the years had added lines I didn't recognize in the picture. My name printed below, and then the word that made my blood turn to ice. Deceased. I dropped the card, fumbling with it in my hands. My voice caught. This isn't possible. This is a mistake. I looked up. The driver was watching me, eyes calm, unnervingly still, like he knew something I couldn't understand. I wanted to look away. I wanted to run, but my body refused. My feet felt rooted to the gravel. I stepped back, trying to create distance. You, how did you get this? My voice shook. I was aware of every creak of the checkpoint. Every wind gust rattling the signpost above me. The world seemed impossibly sharp and still at once. The driver didn't answer, just stared, his hands resting lightly on the wheel. I could see the moonlight catching faint lines of dust and scratches on the dash, faintly glowing in the night. My pulse was hammering in my ears. Something about him, he was wrong. Not human, not entirely. The way he sat, the way he waited, it was deliberate, predatory almost. I held the ID card closer, fumbling to read it again. The word deceased burned itself into my mind. How? Why? 10 years, maybe more. My life, my experiences. I had lived them. I remembered them. I was here. And yet this card said otherwise. My reflection in the window seemed to ripple, briefly, as if the world itself had stuttered. I called it in over the radio, voice trembling. Checkpoint 3. I have a vehicle. The driver handed me an ID card. My ID card. Marked deceased. Repeat deceased. Silence followed, broken only by static. Copy. Stay with the vehicle. Backup is en route. I wanted to obey. I wanted to step back, to wait for someone else to handle this. But my curiosity, or maybe something darker, compelled me forward. I leaned closer to the window, flashlight in hand, trying to see his face clearly. The moonlight caught his eyes, too dark, too reflective, like they weren't quite human. He blinked slowly. I shivered. I asked a question, though my throat felt like sand. Where did you get this? My hand shook, and I felt sweat bead at my temple, cold in the night air. The driver said nothing, just watched the silence press against me, thick and heavy, making it hard to think, hard to breathe. I remembered the reports I'd filed over the years. Missing cars, abandoned roads, strange sightings. I'd never considered them important. Routine paperwork. But now, looking at this ID, everything made sense and none of it did. I felt small, tiny, exposed in the dark. The road behind me stretched endlessly, empty. The checkpoint lights hummed, flickering faintly, and I realized with a sinking certainty that I was looking at myself, or not myself. I forced a question past my lips. Are you me? The driver's eyes glinted in the moonlight. He tilted his head just slightly. No answer. The way he moved, so subtle, deliberate. It was like he was testing me, like he had all the time in the world, and I had none. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Every instinct screamed at me to back away, to get out of the gravel, to run down the road and never look back. But the night had other plans. I held the ID card in my hand, feeling the plastic edges bite into my palm. The picture looked older than I felt. Younger, maybe. I traced the face with a fingertip, almost afraid I would touch him, afraid that I was touching something impossible. The word deceased pressed in on me, a weight in my chest. I felt my breath catch. I was alive. I had just checked the vehicle, written the logs, remembered my life. And yet here was, this card said otherwise. The radio crackled again. Backup was close. I could hear the faint roar of headlights against the dark pavement. Relief should have come, but it didn't. Not with the driver still sitting there, calm, patient. watching. It wasn't just a car. It wasn't just a man. It was something else. Something that had waited all these years to appear. And now it had. I stepped back, forcing myself to breathe. My hand still clutched the ID. I glanced down at it. The photos stared back at me, familiar and strange. I wondered if it had always been waiting for this moment. If, somehow, all the years had led to this encounter at this lonely checkpoint. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe a forged ID. But the weight of it, the way the driver moved, the way he held himself, the impossibility of the car being here after 10 years, it didn't fit any rational explanation. I could feel my own mind bending around it, struggling to grasp it, to accept it. I asked one more time, voice breaking, "Who are you?" The driver leaned slightly forward. I caught the faintest smile again, and then he said nothing, not a word. But I could feel it, the answer in the air, pressed against the gravel, in the hum of the lights, in the shadows that stretched behind him. I wasn't supposed to understand it. Not yet, not ever. I looked down at the ID one last time. The word deceased burned in my mind, impossible and absolute. My name, my face, my life, my memories, all contradicted by this simple car of plastic. And in that moment, I realized something I couldn't deny. Whatever this was, whatever had driven that car to me, it knew everything, knew the life I lived, the roads I traveled, the nights I spent alone. And it had waited. The headlights of the backup drew closer, and I stepped back, letting them take over. But my eyes never left the driver. He sat there, silent, still watching, and then, as if on cue, the car started. Engine quiet, almost too quiet, rolling forward smoothly. Not fast, not aggressive, just moving, deliberate. And then it stopped. No driver's hand on the wheel. Nothing. And for a moment, I thought the impossible had happened. The car had driven itself. I stepped closer, instinctively, and the driver, or whatever he was, disappeared. Just gone. Empty seat. Dust swirling faintly in the moonlight. My pulse raced. The ID card dropped from my hand, fluttering to the gravel. I wanted to pick it up, to hold on to proof, but fear held me rooted. When the backup arrived, the car was empty, silent. The driver's seat cold and still. Nothing inside but the faint, lingering smell of leather and something else metallic. My colleagues checked the plates, the logs, the records. Everything was consistent. Expired, missing for 10 years. But no one was there. Not a soul. I didn't speak much on the way back. My mind kept returning to the card, to the word deceased, to the face that stared back at me, and I knew with a cold certainty that whatever had been in that car wasn't gone. It had left the car. Yes, but it hadn't left me. When I finally got home, I sat in the dark, staring at the walls, listening to my own breath. The ID card sat on my dresser, still in my hand as if I had never let go. My name, my face, deceased. And I knew, deep down, that the encounter wasn't over. That night, that car, that impossible driver, they had crossed a line, and the line wasn't meant to be uncrossed. I don't know if I'll ever forget it. The ID, the driver, the way he moved, the way he watched, the impossibility of it all. Something inside me shifted that night, a recognition of a world I hadn't known existed. And I knew, beyond reason, that it would follow me, always,